this meeting, October 20th, 2022 meeting of Boulder City Council. I want to note that our mayor, Aaron Brockett, is out today, and Bob Yates, who's another council member, will be late. So he will be here, but in about an hour. And I am Mayor Pro Tem Rachel Friend, so I will be leading the meeting tonight. And we will start off with a couple of announcements. And I think we have slides, yeah. So just a reminder on COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. You can get more information for either of those things if you go to www.boco.org/COVID testing. And we also still have the Boulder site available for free drive-through testing or bike-through testing at Stasio Drive. Number 2, is there also a slide? Yeah, return to council chambers. Welcome back to public participation in chambers. With the public being back in chambers beginning last week, we wanted to reissue a couple of reminders that we are offering the public to participate both virtually and in person. You were asked to indicate on the open comment and public hearing forms if you will be speaking virtually or in person. In-person speakers will speak first, virtual speakers will follow. All speakers are listed in the order in which they signed up, and speakers may change their location preference if needed by contacting the city clerk's office at cityclerksoffice@bouldercolorado.gov prior to the start of the meeting. And I assume if someone is in this meeting and didn't have this announcement since it's so fresh, and they were virtual, they could come up to you right now and change?
Well, actually, it's on the website, and it has also been documented over the last few weeks, but if anybody did want to change, yes, we would accommodate.
Awesome, thank you for that last minute game call. Okay, so now we will move into our regular meeting of Thursday, October 20th, and we will start with call to order and roll call.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. We'll start the roll call with Councilmember Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Folkers.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Friend.
Here.
Councilmember Joseph.
Present.
Spear.
Present.
Wallach.
Here.
And Weiner.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem, we have our quorum.
Yay. Okay, moving on to agenda item 1A is an International Stuttering Awareness Day declaration that is my pleasure to present. So I will come up there and invite the guests in the audience who will receive it to stand up with me. Come on up. Let's be on TV. Okay, thank you. Today we honor International Stuttering Awareness Day, which will be on October 22nd, 2022. Across the world, that is the day, along with being my anniversary, that is recognized as International Stuttering Awareness Day. Stuttering is a speech difference characterized by repetition of sounds, syllables, or words, prolongation of sounds, and interruptions in speech. It is estimated that about 1% of the world's population stutters, and roughly 3 million Americans stutter. Organizations dedicated to bringing hope and empowerment to children and adults who stutter through support, education, and advocacy have locations here in Boulder. Top academics and researchers in the field of stuttering currently work at CU Boulder and have a long history of doing so. Many stutterers suffer frustration and embarrassment that can lead to harmful emotional stress. Stuttering is a form of verbal diversity and should be recognized as simply a different way of speaking. When stuttering continues into adulthood, a person may have difficulty communicating with other people, and stuttering may affect a person's quality of life, interpersonal relationships, job opportunities, and professional growth. During the months surrounding International Stuttering Awareness Day, nonprofits like My Speech and Lebsac Speech Therapy seek to raise awareness about communication disorders and the many ways that people with the daily challenges of stuttering can be supported. By recognizing these challenges, we can draw attention to the needs, shine a light on these often invisible disabilities, and help avoid the negative consequences of misunderstanding stuttering. We, the City Council of the City of Boulder, Colorado, hereby declare October 22nd, 2022 as International Stuttering Awareness Day. Round of applause. And we would love for you to say a few words.
Thank you. There is a long-held narrative that stuttering is a disorder that has to be overcome. This narrative sets up us people who stutter to experience deep and painful shame when we work our tails off, often as kids in speech therapy, and we don't end up overcoming our stutter. The advocacy movement in our community, which is led by people who stutter, is working to combat this damaging narrative and to replace it with a more humanistic and indeed realistic one. Our message can be distilled into 5 parts. 1, stuttering is a form of neurodiversity, not a disorder. 2, stuttering when persisting into adulthood is incurable and does not need to be overcome. 3, what does need to be overcome is actually the stigma that lives in all of us, people who stutter included, because we all grow up in the same environment. And it's perpetuated by societal messages that depict normal as being fluent speech and anything else as being abnormal. 4, when people who stutter and their listeners can practice just expecting communicative differences, people who stutter will be more free to embrace their voices, stutter and all. And 5, a society comprised of people with less shame is a healthy society. People are better able to contribute to the greater good when they aren't expending an energy being at war with themselves. So on behalf of the entire stuttering community, thank you, Councilwoman Friend and the whole council, for helping us bring visibility to our movement. We are very grateful.
I'm Steph with Lovesac Speech Therapy, and I just wanted to also say thank you to the council for bringing awareness to stuttering. I want to tell you about somebody really quickly in my life that's very important, my older brother, who is in the audience, Jasper. He is pretty darn cool, guys. He is my hero and the person I have always looked up to. He had the coolest clothes in high school. He was in National Honor Society, and he was voted homecoming king by his graduating class. But the coolest thing about him is he's been a person who stutters since the age of 6. In our hometown of Pagosa Springs, Colorado, embraced him for his resilience and his ability to do whatever he wanted regardless. So thank you so much for recognizing that children in Boulder can grow up not needing to be bullied or shamed for the way they talk, and to show that adults who stutter in the workforce in the city of Boulder can do just as good a job as anybody else and do any job that they want to. So thank you so much for working with us.
Thanks again for those awesome and inspiring words. And now we will move on to agenda item 2, open comment, and I will turn it over to Brenda Rittenauer to go over the public participation guidelines and slides.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Emily, if you'll bring up the slides, please, that would be helpful. I am not seeing them on, oh, there we go, wonderful. And I'm just going to change the view to make sure, no, not gonna do that. Sorry, learning my new little environment here that is slightly different. Just going to spotlight the slides so that everyone here on Zoom can also see them. We know that some of you who join us often may have heard these before, and we thank you for your patience while we share them with folks who may not be as familiar with the guidelines that we have created. The city worked with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversation. This vision supports the physical and emotional safety of community members, staff, and council, as well as supporting democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. There's a lot of information about this vision and how we co-created it with the community online. Just go to our homepage, bouldercolorado.gov, and search Productive Atmospheres in the search box. Next slide, please. The following are examples of rules of decorum that are found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that have been created to support this vision. These will be upheld during tonight's meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they're commonly known by, and individuals must share their whole name or display their whole name before beginning to speak. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. If your name does not appear, if you're testifying virtually tonight, please reach out to me in the Q&A box and I can help change that for you. Also, we ask that in-person participants please refrain from expressing support or disagreement verbally. That will help us keep this a welcoming space for all points of view. Traditionally, in council chambers, support has been shown through American Sign Language applause, like this. Sometimes people call it jazz hands. So we encourage you to do that if you'd like to show support. And thank you very much, Emily. We will move on. If you can pull up the timer. I am going to remove the spotlight for council to be sure that people can see the timer as they are speaking. And we will start with in-person testimony.
Thanks so much, Brenda. Okay, I'll call the first couple people, just so that the people who are not number one, but maybe 2 and 3 can start queuing up. So we will start off with Keaton Gray, and on deck will be Chris Lauridsen and Caroline Conselman. And I'm sorry in advance for any names I'm not getting right. But first up, Keaton Gray, please.
Is this going to start automatically? Okay. All right. Hello, City Council. My name is Keaton Gray. I am a licensed social worker, a full-time mental health therapist here in Boulder. On November 8th, Coloradans will vote on Proposition 122, which would create a state-regulated access model to make it legal for people to receive psychedelic-assisted treatment services at, quote, licensed healing centers and approved healthcare locations. So I am very concerned about this initiative, and I ask Boulder City Council to lead the way in restorative justice to decriminalize the use of psychedelic medicines for all adults over age 21 in this city. So psychedelics have been categorized as a Schedule I drug since 1970, and the war on drugs has wreaked havoc and trauma on communities who are disproportionately, right, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So a state-regulated model for licensed professionals like myself to facilitate this treatment without allowing decriminalized usage for all would continue to enable these racist-based dangers. This treatment is predicted to cost an individual around $3,000, and companies are already capitalizing and patenting psychedelics in preparation of its regulation. So humans have been using entheogenic plants with intention for healing since prehistoric times, and healing is our birthright. Punishing this has been a deep trauma for our country. So I ask that Boulder City Council decriminalize the personal use of entheogenic plants and fungi for those over the age of 21. Data shows minimal public health and safety risks in cities that have already done this. So please, City Council, do not let companies and licensed professionals like myself capitalize these medicines without allowing equitable and safe access for all adults. I ask Boulder City Council to lead the way in decriminalizing natural medicines for all and uphold values of solidarity, mutual aid, justice, and equity for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Keaton. Next up is Chris Lauridsen, and then Caroline Conselman and Holly Carlson.
Hi, my name is Chris Lauridsen. I'm a fellow Boulder resident. I attend the University of Colorado Boulder as a graduate student, and I also completed my undergraduate studies here. I'm speaking today also on behalf of the effort to make psychedelic medicines fully decriminalized here in Boulder. I'd like to share my perspective as to why this issue is of high importance. On campus, I'm fortunate to serve as the co-president of the Psychedelic Club. Our club has a history of being a safe space for individuals in our community to share the experience that they have had with psychedelic medicines without fear. We have consistently heard, contrary to bad faith depictions, of dangerous sensation-seeking or escapism, instead powerful personal accounts of overcoming trauma and addiction, releasing emotions previously stuck, perpetuating illnesses in the body, gaining powerful personal insight and direction, and reclaiming a productive engagement with life. I have had other experiences which inform me about the importance of us taking this action. In the inpatient psychiatric unit at Boulder Community Hospital, in my time as a mental health worker, I have seen up close the plight of individuals in our community who are tremendously suffering and for whom any measure to address mental health concerns could be life-changing. This change is already taking place. We must act now. We must be proactive and not reactive, and we must use compassion to guide our decision. I have a tremendous love for our community in Boulder. We must preserve the strength of our home through being adaptive to this current change. Let me be clear, we must change our policy to completely end the prohibition of our nature, to be in relationship with nature and its medicines, with the unwavering condition that our response promote justice and equity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next up, Caroline, then Holly Carlson, and Katie Moore.
Hi, my name is Dr. Caroline Konzelman. I'm an associate teaching professor of anthropology at CU Boulder. I have 25 years of research experience on the origins and impacts of the U.S. war on drugs, both domestically and internationally. I teach and publish and run workshops on these topics, and I organize the Cannabis and Psychedelics Symposium that takes place every spring at CU, collaborating with student leaders and engaged community members. I'm also the mother of an 8th grader at Manhattan Middle School, and so this issue is personal for me as well. I want to make 3 key points in favor of decriminalization of entheogenic plants and fungi from an academic perspective. Drug prohibition policies in the U.S. were rooted in racism against indigenous peoples, immigrant communities, and African Americans, and they relied on punitive methods of social control. The results were predictable: decimated working class and inner city neighborhoods, police corruption and racial profiling, prisons filled with primarily black and brown people, violence in our communities, and no net reduction in drug use, addiction, or overdose deaths. Ending prohibition provides the opportunity to re-engage democracy and prioritize compassion and meaningful public education with a focus on social and racial justice. Decriminalizing entheogenic plants and fungi for innovative psychedelic therapies and ceremonial uses will increase community safety, reduce racist policing, bolster our local economy, show respect for ancient indigenous knowledge, honor interdisciplinary scientific research, and prevent drug abuse and overdose deaths, especially among our youth. The City of Boulder has the opportunity to be on the right side of history and set an example for what harm reduction policies can look like. After all, prohibition laws have caused far more harm than psychedelics ever have or could. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline. Holly Carlson, then Katie Moore, and Sherry Hack.
Mayor, and if I may just request that people speak into the mic. We're getting notification that people in the back cannot hear, so.
All right, let's all lean in.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Hello, City Council members. I'm here once again to discuss Boulder's flawed affordable housing and Housing First programs. The slogan that Boulder's affordable housing is for everyone is inaccurate. It is apparently not for families like mine. I am a working single mother, active community member, college student, and a taxpayer. I have lived at Depot Square, an affordable housing property, for 5.5 years. In fact, I've recently been told by the staff of Boulder's Housing and Human Services Department that because my rent isn't paid through Section 8 or a voucher program, I can be bullied and forced out of my apartment for a variety of reasons, such as filing complaints about safety and criminal activity in my building. My housing is not secure. The message I'm getting is that unless I am an unhoused addict with a lengthy criminal record, having a roof over my family's head isn't a priority for the City of Boulder's leadership. Our city is allowing slumlord property management companies to bully people like me to move out of their homes within 30 days and find new housing in the middle of a housing crisis and a market overloaded by victims of recent fires for the last 2 years. I know this, I'm in construction. Housing and Human Services and the majority of council members have been unresponsive to my ongoing reports of safety and building violations and to this current housing dilemma I am in. However, I would like to thank Tara Weiner as well as Rachel Friend, because those two have gone above and beyond their council duties. For the rest of you, shame on all of you, because you all sat here and said you were here for us residents, and you're not, especially the men. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Katie Moore, Sherry Hack, and Donovan Smith are next.
Mayor, we've been notified that Katie is not present and will not be attending.
Okay, not virtual either?
Not to my knowledge, no, ma'am.
Okay, Sherry Hack, Donovan Smith, and then Ari Al. And can I just ask somebody in the back row, if you can't hear, give me like a wave and I'll interrupt and ask people to speak up. Thank you, I see a nod, thank you.
Sherry Hack, longtime Boulder resident. You know what? Usually when I come here, I'm prepared with something to say.
Can you speak a little closer? We're getting the waves.
But tonight I don't really have anything prepared. And I want to talk about crime. I want to talk about CU South, how you shove that down our throats to make us think it's a good thing when it's not. It's inadequate flood protection, and why in God's name this small town needs a third campus, when wouldn't it be more equitable if another CU built another campus that wasn't on the Front Range in a community that really needed it? But as far as public safety, I feel like you on city council, you're not hearing people, you're not listening, or else you simply just don't care. Probably it's the latter. You know, a friend of mine told me, go to city council and get really angry, but you know, it's just not my nature. But we've had lockdowns at both high schools this year. Boulder High School in April. The perpetrators of that lockdown were not locked up. And then on October 12th, we had a guy breaking windows at Fairview, causing that school to go into a lockdown. But he was at that school many other dates before that, 9/24, 9/26, 9/30. He also showed up at Boulder High School. And guess what? He's not in custody now. And you know what? It's not my responsibility to find out why he's not in custody. It's your responsibility. You guys aren't doing your job. There's a lot of safety deniers out there, and I just want to say that I myself have been a victim of a crime where a panhandler threatened to shoot me when I wouldn't give him any money. So I would encourage all voters, vote across party lines and vote for public safety candidates.
Thanks, Sherry. Next, Donovan Smith, Ari, what's up? Oh, and just a reminder to please use your jazz hands. Donovan Smith, Ari Al, and then Travis Hugh Cully.
Many of you have heard my story before, but I'll be sharing it again to advocate for the decriminalization of psychedelics in Boulder. I grew up in a house where my queerness wasn't celebrated but shamed because of religion. I hid and I hated who I was. I internalized the shame, and by my young adulthood, my life was filled with depression, self-harm, suicide attempts, anxiety, substance abuse, and ultimately a methamphetamine addiction. When I came out and left the church at 21 years old, I'm 27 now, my entire worldview was shattered. Without religion, what does life mean? Why am I here? I was thrown into the wild to fend for myself. I turned to existential philosophy, cosmology, Eastern religions, and sociology for answers, but I only found more questions. I was really lost. It wasn't until my first psychedelic experience in 2017 that I began my very messy healing journey. Through psychedelics, I've learned to embrace the existentialism by reframing it as a curiosity for life, the vastness of the cosmos, and connection. Psychedelics continue to change myself. It has taken years of painful lessons, therapy, and the best support system that a human could ask for in order to stay alive in this body. But integral to that healing over the last year in particular has been microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. They have helped me create space between negative thinking and what is actually true about who I am, love and be proud of my inner child and most authentic self, heal from trauma, and find real recovery from addiction. Most recently, they helped me get back on track with recovery after a relapse. Mushrooms are a beautiful tool, but they don't make me invincible from my humanness, and I still have bad days and weeks, but recovery is progress, not perfection. And mushrooms have taught me about hope and given me the strength to ask for help when I need it. I'm very grateful. My hope is that anyone and everyone will soon be able to take part in these plant healing practices and feel empowered to do so without fearing the law. I am just one person on a rock falling through space, trying to stay clean, grounded, and in community with people who love me, and I firmly believe that such medicines like psilocybin can help other people in Boulder find healing like I have and still am. Thank you.
Thanks, Donovan. I'm sorry you didn't get the message that you're fabulous in your childhood, but glad you're into some recovery now. Next, Ari, then Travis Ucully, and Valerie Love.
Okay. I want to thank Boulder City Council for your time and consideration. My name is Dr. Ari All. I am a physician and psychiatrist working in Boulder, Colorado. I'm here to talk about decriminalization of psychedelics. In the past 10 years, research has shown that psychedelics can have profound effects on anxiety, depression, and trauma. A single dose of psilocybin has much higher remission rates for depression than the traditional antidepressants we currently use in psychiatry. In that same line, MDMA has been shown to have the highest efficacy of trauma and PTSD of any treatment tried so far. As for safety, studies have shown that in terms of harm to society and harm to the person taking the drug, alcohol, heroin, and cocaine cause the most harm, while MDMA, LSD, and psilocybin have the least harm of any illicit drug. A recent study from the Journal of Psychopharmacology showed that those who use psychedelics are actually less likely to commit a crime than the general population. Denver has decriminalized psilocybin, and a review of Denver City Council reported decriminalizing psilocybin mushrooms in the city and county of Denver has not since created any significant public health or public safety issue in the city. As for addiction, studies have shown that psychedelics have anti-addictive properties and can be used to treat diseases such as alcohol addiction. For instance, a study recently published in JAMA Psychiatry showed that after a single dose of psilocybin, patients who abuse alcohol had less binge drinking days over the following 32 weeks. Furthermore, due to the high tolerance that occurs immediately after taking psychedelics, traditional psychedelics such as LSD and psilocybin are extremely hard, if not impossible, to use every day, thus lowering the risk of abuse. I ask that Boulder City Council make decriminalization of psychedelics a priority in order to end arrests and match our policy with the prevailing science. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ari. Next, Travis, then Valerie Love, and Clara Elizabeth.
Hello, council members. Most of my speech is going to be directed to Ms. Tara Weiner. At our last meeting, I called on council to reconsider the narrative around the Marshall Fire and to request the sampling of the Marshall Mesa for hot spots from Rocky Flats. This session, I have something else that has come up. On October 3rd, Monday, Halloween morning, the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council will be electing 2 voices from the public to join them in the meetings. Slide. There is only one chance to make this election meaningful. 2 seats are open. 3 candidates are on the ballot. To my left, Herb Fenster. To my right, Kim Griffiths. Today, I bring you my commitment to serve the public on this council. Ms. Weiner, as you are the director of the Boulder chair on this council, I am urging you to elect Herb Fenster and myself. Boulder needs activists on the Stewardship Council. The case against Kim Griffiths is clear. Slide. Kim has long been a member of the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council. If this election is a ruse, she will be appointed the public stooge. Slide. Ms. Weiner, I urge you, due to her conflicts of interest, to choose me over Kim Griffiths. Slide. The Rocky Flats Stewardship Council should no longer be able to operate like a set of horse blinders on our counties. Slide. If there is a relationship between Rocky Flats and Marshall Fire, the Stewardship Council needs to have the ears to hear what that relationship is. As a person from within your community, I stand to represent Boulder there.
Thank you, Travis. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Next, Valerie Love, Clara Elizabeth, and Valerie Beltran.
Which one's the button? Is there a button to advance the slides? Okay. Okay, thank you for letting me speak. Raise your hand, everybody, if you agree safety is our #1 job. Yeah, let's do it. Next. Current laws and weak consequences cause suffering. We must break the cycle. Next. In order to protect the kids and vulnerable unhoused. Next. We must separate the victims from the predators. We must break the cycle. Next. Easy access matters. A child can walk out these doors and buy meth in 5 minutes. Next. This is from Friday. Stolen property, smoking meth, 0 consequences. Boulder High School is only 400 yards away. Next. Current weak laws allow people to smoke meth in public and only get a ticket. Next. By allowing this, it enables addiction and suffering. We must break the cycle. Next. We have a mental health crisis that we are making worse with current laws in Boulder. Police officer told me there are 4 types of unhoused people. Those hit by hard times and want help. Those who have serious mental health and addiction issues. Those who are unhoused by choice. And then the predators and drug dealers who are taking advantage of all the vulnerable ones. Next. Safety first. Kids are afraid and don't know where to safely walk around schools because there are random drug dealers and moving encampments with predators hiding among the vulnerable unhoused. Make Boulder safe. Next. The system is broken and we must fix easy access environment that allows addiction to thrive. The vulnerable unhoused people need protection from predators too. Next. Make Boulder unattractive to predators. Prevent easy access to deadly drugs and protect the vulnerable. More mental health and addiction services. Ibogaine really works. It saved my life. Stricter drug ban 1 mile from all schools. Stricter camping ban 1 mile from all schools. Stricter laws around meth, heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine. Next. Safety
Actually,
first.
your time is up. We would love to have you email us the rest of it. Thank you.
I did.
Okay.
Thanks.
Next is Clara Elizabeth, Valerie Beltran, and Bridget Mars.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clara Elizabeth. I am a 3rd-year PhD student here at CU in cognitive psychology, and I've done a little bit of math modeling work using machine learning tools and other mathematics to model the cognitive effects of psychedelics. I am also a survivor of childhood trauma. I developed severe PTSD in high school to the point where if someone just said a certain word that was triggering to me, I would go home and cry for 3 days having flashbacks. So I could tell you today how in undergrad, the use of a couple psychedelics, including LSD, MDMA, and psilocybin mushrooms, saved my life. But instead, I'm going to tell you about how the illegalization of psychedelics, specifically LSD, almost ended my life. So consider my words that you hear today as the words of a ghost, because I should not be speaking to you, and I am incredibly grateful that I can. When LSD was made illegal, it was based upon the chemical structure. So what happens when you draw a line in the sand is that the people on the bad side don't stop doing the thing. They just get around the law, whether that's good or bad. And so people changed a little bit of the chemical structure, got a little bit farther away from LSD, but then that was made illegal. And then they changed it again, and that was outlawed. And it kept going and going and going. There were a couple other historical things too, including a man named Alexander Shulgin, who created a bunch of these chemicals as well. But specifically, it is this getting around the law process that created all these designer drugs. So if you look at some studies that were done where people took samples of street LSD before the ban of it, it was generally okay. I mean, it wasn't the best. You should still test it. Like, if 15% of it might be adulterated with PCP or amphetamine. But nowadays, if you look at it, there are hundreds of research chemicals.
Sorry, your time is up. I hope you have our email address and can email us the rest of your testimony. Thank you. Next up, Valerie Beltran, Bridget Mars, and Malik Asfir.
Hello, my name is Valerie Beltran. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in trauma, and I did a year-long psychedelic-assisted therapy training program at the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. I'm also a supervisor at a ketamine-assisted therapy clinic where ketamine is legal, and I also provide integration and preparation sessions for veterans for a nonprofit that allows the veterans to travel to countries where psychedelic-assisted therapy is already legal. And in this work, I have seen incredible changes in people who have been utterly hopeless. You've heard from a lot of my colleagues here tonight, my friends here tonight, who are sharing the incredible changes that they've experienced in themselves. And I'd like to paint a little bit of a picture of some of the things that I've seen. I've seen people who have been suicidal, made multiple suicide attempts, who have had absolutely no hope for life, who have been completely through every single type of therapy you could possibly imagine, and who have gone through just one or sometimes two sessions of a psychedelic-assisted therapy, and who no longer even meet the criteria for PTSD anymore. To be able to have these kinds of opportunities is incredible, and that's why I'm a huge proponent of legalizing and medicalizing the use of psychedelic-assisted therapy. And to begin, I think we need to decriminalize so that nobody's going to jail for these substances. I also want to make a distinction of how different these entheogens are from other substances like meth or other things that we're mentioning, and how much healing potential there can be. Especially in other countries where they're already legalized, drug crime has been reduced, crime in general has been reduced because resources are able to be reallocated to harm reduction, to therapy, and so that people are actually getting healing and support. So I'm here to speak to, wait, was that my last point? Wait, one sec. Yes, that's it, just to decriminalize the use of psychedelics. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Kudos to you for getting through almost the whole thing without having to look. That's amazing. Okay, next we have Bridget Mars.
Hello, I'm Brigitte Mars. I'm the author of 14 books on natural medicine. I've taught at herbal medicine at Naropa University for 40 years. I'm also a mother and grandmother of 3 teenagers. I'm here to speak on the behalf of decriminalizing psychedelics. I believe these substances to be so much safer than the drugs that are currently marketed to people. I do believe when used in a safe setting, they can be transformational. Many respectable people are using them. Naropa has a Department of Psychedelic Studies. This is going to be the medicine of the future, and the people that are learning about this should not be criminals. The people that are going to be using these medicines are being transformed. In my own work, I've seen that these substances can help people overcome addiction because there can be the opportunity for an epiphany, how we are all connected, how we are children of the divine. I've seen this help people with addiction, with post-traumatic stress, fear of death. The creativity that can come from these experiences is unsurpassed when we think about the music that came out of the 60s, but the possibility of truth, beauty, goodness. We know that our planet is in peril. We so need something that's going to wake people up so we can be better stewards of this planet, find ways that we can coexist together without creating warfare. I do believe that this is an opportunity for evolution for our planet. I do believe that psychedelics can transform the world when we think of things that came out of the earlier psychedelic revolution that are still with us today, things like yoga, meditation, organic farming, natural childbirth, alternative education. These things have all been infiltrated into our society for the good, and the natural foods movement. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brigitte. Next we have Malik Asfir, Ramsey Abueta, and Patrick Murphy.
Hi. My name is Malik. I migrated from the Middle East to the US at age 19 with a death sentence and life-altering
Can you lean
trauma.
into the mic a bit? I'm getting the waves from the
Yes.
back. Thank
Okay.
you, back row.
From years in solitary confinement to multiple attempts to end my life, arriving to the U.S. not knowing anyone speaking the language or having money, I welcomed the unwelcoming street and called them home for 3 months. Although I built a life beyond that and lived the American dream from the white picket fence to the blue passport, I was never able to escape the constant fear and pain. My mind was imprisoned by the shackles of my past until psychedelic came into my life. Since then, I've been able to close my eyes and not be haunted by the faces of those that raped me, not hear the scream of those being tortured, not smell the dry blood on the walls, and not feel the pain in every cell of my body. I've traveled a long, long way to be here. To paint you a picture in which people like me can have access to this medicine, not only because we as a human deserve it, to be frank, we earned it, but because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Great. Great jazz hands. Thank you so much for that, Malik, and glad you're here. Ramzi Abueta, Patrick Murphy, and then Del Jolly will be our last, I think, in chambers open commenter.
Greetings, Boulder City Council. It feels good to be finally speaking to you in the flesh. Most of you know me by now, and I'm grateful to have formed personal relationships with many of you. But for the sake of the record, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ramzi Abueta. I have a degree in neuroscience. I've worked in clinical research, and I'm a community organizer and a drug policy reform activist. I'm here to speak to what so many have already spoken on today, which is the necessity for Boulder to join 15 cities across the US in decriminalizing psychedelics and entheogenic substances. The powerful testimonies that we've heard today speak for themselves. For 10 months, we've been having members of our local community, your constituents, putting themselves out on a limb and basically incriminating themselves to tell their stories of how psychedelics have impacted their lives. It's evident that there's something deeply powerful and profound behind these stories. This is not a small or niche community. This community is large and abundant and spans multiple domains of our society and culture, representing a consilience of the neuroscience community, the medical and therapy community, the university research community, the art and music community, the indigenous community, and so much more. Very rarely does something inspire such a lively and vivacious movement. Boulder has always been at the cutting edge of health, wellness, and modern living. Psychedelics have passed every test of being safe and effective modalities for mental health, spiritual transformation, profound inner work, and community building. When I first started working in the clinical research industry and got certified in medical ethics, a crucial principle we learned about was the principle of beneficence, which states that if we know if something is good and we willingly keep it from people, we are doing something unethical. The criminalization of psychedelics is a crime against humanity, and obstinance or inaction on ending the criminalization is complicity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and very well timed. And it's been so long since we had the jazz hands, and have been here, and it's just, I love it. Next is Patrick Murphy, and then Del Jolly.
My name is Patrick Murphy. I've lived here 53 years. 2A or not 2A? 2B or not to be? Those are the climate action ballot questions. A pair of no's are a good answer. For me, 2A triggers a response of, oh no, not again. Fire mitigation is important but needs a separate department and budget. 2B triggers the thought, are you out of your mind? 18 plus years and $80 plus million of bondage to bad leadership, bad logic, and an employee-packed pay roster with no real cost-benefit analysis. Climate inaction has the logic wrong. Boulder government has electrified their own buildings and helped rich people electrify their homes. Boulder has electric vehicles and lots of chargers for them. This is not equity. This is acting rich. Electricity is the current carbon equivalent of burning 44% coal. While the electric transmission grid is getting overloaded, Boulder is making the present climate worse. Unless you're tied to renewables, you're burning the carbon equivalent of 44% coal with heat pumps, EVs, and electric bikes. We need to use renewables more and electricity less. More later, but not now, unless it's directly tied to solar or wind. Boulder in Action has a long list of good intentions in 2A, plus collaboration hot air, and zillions of trivial goals that fail the cost-benefit analysis if one were ever to be done. We all know the road paved with good intentions where it leads. To fix what's broken, you first have to see how to replace its broken parts. Next time, how to fix the broken parts.
Thank you, Patrick. Next up, Del Jolly.
Hello, thank you guys for having me. I am a Colorado native, born here in Boulder County resident for 10 years, father of 3 wonderful children, and just had my 15-year anniversary with my wife. I'm the director of a research nonprofit called Unlimited Sciences. We've been working with Johns Hopkins University for the last 3 years on how the community uses psilocybin. Psychedelics have been shown to help improve with so many ailments such as obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, pain, and even stuttering. Johns Hopkins has raised $17 million for their university wing, and multiple other universities are following suit. This is a movement that is moving forward. 15 cities have already decriminalized psychedelics. Boulder needs to be next. I want you to take a second to remember back to when you were a little kid. Things were so bright and exciting, and you felt like the world was your oyster, and you were just meant for so much more. At least I did, and now I do. And while a lot of that has been lost over time, each of you haven't lost all of that, and that's why I think that you're here. You're making change in your community, serving your community as city council members. The community here is speaking tonight. Psychedelics have brought so much joy and hope back to me personally. And you have the ability to make massive change in our community, locally. Please, I beg you to take action as soon as possible to decriminalize, which is our right to take our cognitive liberty back. Thank you guys for your time.
Thanks so much. Lot of jazz hands. Okay, so now we're going to turn over to virtual. So I think that's over to Brenda or Brenda.
Hi, thank you, Rachel. So we have 3 speakers signed up. I am not seeing David Dodone in our meeting at this moment. So David, if you are here and perhaps you're showing up under a different name, please go ahead and raise your hand or reach out to me in the Q&A so that I know that you're here and can change your name and get you in line in your turn. Otherwise, we will start with Lynn Siegel. Second would be David, if David is here, and then we'll end on Lori Preston. So Lynn, you should be able to unmute now.
Will you let me know if there's a technical issue?
We can hear you great.
My audio and the video go out during the session today, just so you know. And if it happens, then let me jump back in again. I'll log out and log back in. Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, my comment, I'd love to be less of a curmudgeon. You know what, council? Make me less of a curmudgeon. Make me. See you south. See you later on the Boulder campus. And the enrollment needs to be reduced. So much further than just expansion. We need to reduce the enrollment at CU. The Harvest House, the Millennium, is a takings of CU from the city of Boulder. 931 bedrooms for students. that were income in our sales tax revenue for the city of Boulder. All up and down 36 coming into Boulder, every hotel's been turned into student housing. CU is like an octopus with people all over Boulder. Too much of a good thing. Stop already. There's the Hill Hotel. There's already congestion. I couldn't go to Open Studios this weekend in El Dorado because I can't get there without going through a huge traffic jam on the Hill. Webinar format is not fair. It doesn't even allow me to ever see who else is at the meeting. If I'm remote, I'm not vaccinated, I can't be down there. If I'm remote, I can't see the slideshow. That's discrimination. And the woman who spoke from the Boulder Depot, I don't know who her name was, but that was horrible what she talked about.
Thanks, Lynn. Your time is up. Next, we have David Dodone, if he has arrived virtually.
I do not see David in the meeting at this time. So we will move on to Lori Preston. Again, David, if you're here, please reach out to me in the Q&A so we can get you back in line. Lori, you should be able to unmute now.
Thank you. Hi, I am Lori Preston, the proud executive director of the Museum of Boulder. I love it that I get to go last tonight and speak on behalf of many arts and cultural organizations, mostly so that I can emphasize our gratitude for the work that you do as city council representatives and co-lovers and promoters of Boulder. And I also thank you as well for the opportunity to share. At the Museum of Boulder, whose mission is to highlight history happening, we showcase inclusive community stories, preserve them for the future, and we inspire all of us to effect positive change. We're here because of the continued support of the city of Boulder, and we need you now more than ever. We share common denominators straight from your cultural plan: cultural environment, creativity, well-being, prosperity, joy of everyone in the community. Like you, we create a supportive environment for artists and creative professionals. We foster innovative thinking and leadership, prioritize civic dialogue about the ability of culture to positively contribute to the economy, social offerings, the environment, and authentic expression of diversity. But more than anything, we seek to amplify the vibrancy of Boulder. And because of each of you and many matching community members through a beautifully executed capital drive, we receive initial support and funding to help purchase our building. We remain grateful to you and our many contributors. We must continuously educate people that we are an independent 501c3 and that we still owe on our building. And more than ever, we have a significant role to play related to the preservation of artifacts, stories of BIPOC communities, preserving photographs, documents, celebrating culture, and providing a setting for all voices. We'd like to be on the city's constant list of support. Unlike many local museums in Longmont, Loveland, Greeley, Fort Collins, we don't gain a specific amount of our city's financial support. We do receive grants, and we're grateful.
Thanks so much, Lori.
Thank you.
That brings us, I believe, to the end of open comment. I don't know if we put Bob Yates on the naughty list for coming in right at the tail end, but we let's make sure he watches those open comments when he goes home. So with that, I think we are on to the consent agenda. Thanks. No, oh, sorry, I lied. We're going to start first. Would Chris or city attorney or city manager's office have any response or questions on open comment?
Nothing for me tonight, but happy to answer any questions. Appreciate everybody coming.
Do you mind introducing yourself and maybe explaining why you're here tonight,
Sure,
Mr.
I am
Meschuk?
happy to. I'm Chris Meschuk. I'm the deputy city manager, and I'm subbing in today for our city manager, Nuria Rivera-Vandermeiden.
Thank you. Anything from city attorney?
No, I don't have anything to add, though, again, happy to answer questions and appreciate all the participation and vulnerability that was shown tonight.
Yeah, thanks. Any council members have questions or comments? Nicole?
I just also wanted to say thank you to everybody who showed up to speak to us tonight. Really appreciate hearing from you.
All right, with that, thank you again for the jazz hands and the wonderful posters and for being here. And now I believe we are on to consent agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. Our consent agenda tonight is item number 3, and it contains items 3A through 3J.
Chris, shall I turn it over to you?
Sure. I think we just wanted to walk council and the community through the flow of many of the items on the consent agenda, which are related to the budget, which is our public hearing tonight. The council also serves as the board of directors of many general improvement districts, and so I'm going to welcome our finance team up here, our CFO, Cara Skinner, as well as our senior budget manager, Mark Wolf, who's going to give a quick just overview to the district budgets before we consider the consent agenda. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, council. Mark Wolf, senior budget manager. Good to be back with you again. Later this evening, we will discuss the second reading of the 2023 budget. But first, as Chris described, you'll consider the budget, mill levy in certain circumstances, and appropriation for several districts under your purview as part of tonight's consent agenda. This short presentation will provide that explanation and why we are presenting this under consent. The recommended budget as presented in September does include all district-related affairs and associated expenditures. You'll remember the recommended budget was presented as a $513.5 million package, and as amended is now a $515.4 million recommended budget. So that budget, which doesn't include duplications for expenditures made out of funds and then the activities are represented in another fund, that's how we present the whole package. So you've seen that in your recommended budget. District affairs are a part of that package. The formal mechanism to appropriate the dollars is brought through the annual budget, mill levy, and appropriation ordinances. The ordinances cover all funds that are directly under the authority of City Council. Separately, Council considers other annual budgets, mill levies, and appropriations for districts under your purview. Council reviews and approves these actions as the Board of Directors for all general improvement districts and the Boulder Municipal Property Authority, or BUMPA. Council also has statute authority to review and approve the budget of business improvement districts. And because we have to switch between council acting as different bodies to take these actions, we have presented this for the last couple of years, I believe, under consent. So it's just easier from an efficiency standpoint to work through the various different resolutions. All right, and so these are the various different resolutions that you're approving for the, starting with the general improvement districts. The Central Area General Improvement District, or CAGID, the University Hill General Improvement District, or UGID, the 2 Boulder Junction Access District, GIDs, BJAD Parking and BJAD TDM, and Forest Glen General Improvement District, which is an Eco Pass program in Forest Glen. So for these, you're operating as the Board of Directors. Also for the Boulder Municipal Property Authority, which is a nonprofit corporation, instrumentally a part of the city. It is administered by City Council, and you are acting as the Board of Directors in that case as well. The appropriations made by BUMPA is subject to annual renewal during the budget process, so that's why we need a resolution this evening. And then lastly, the Downtown Boulder Business Improvement District. This is a little bit different statute, which says that they must submit an annual operating plan and budget to the city, which City Council reviews and approves. So that's why it's on your agenda as well. All right, last slide here is just to show you the numbers behind all these various different entities. And just to clarify, as posted to Hotline this afternoon, you have a revised item 3D to clarify the dollar amount. We had some old numbers in there, so apologies for that. The rest are as posted in your agenda. And just to clarify one last piece, some information that was shared at CAC on Monday. So council would be able to change any of these individual budgets without impacting the appropriation ordinances later. The exception is if there is an influence on one of those funds. So if you were to increase, let's say, the general fund support of one of the general improvement districts, we would need to increase the appropriation of the general fund, which would impact the ordinances and the resolutions. But if you were just to increase the budget for one of the districts without that relationship, you could do that during the resolution approval process. So I know that was a question that came up and wanted to clarify the answer to that. And I believe that's it. Yes, that's it until we talk about the budget.
Thanks so much, Mark and Cara. Any questions on that presentation? Mark.
What is the particular benefit of having all of these as separate entities, and could any of them actually be folded into the general governance of by the city and funded out of the general fund as every other department is?
That's a good question. I would say for the general improvement districts, those are specific taxing mechanisms. So it allows us within a certain geographical area to impose an additional mill levy to carry out operations. There are several different options for municipalities to create these essentially special districts. It's a different title under state statute. We certainly could do a broader mill levy. I think the idea behind these was to focus on a specific thing. Generally, these are related to transportation demand, but they can be broader than that.
What about bumper? I mean, is that necessarily something that has to operate as a city-governed but separate instrumentality?
Yes, BUMPA is put in place strictly for the purposes of acquiring property and being able to, for the city to issue certificates of participation. So if the city wants to issue certificates of participation, it must have a property authority.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other presentation from staff on the consent agenda? Any other questions or comments, I guess, from council on the consent agenda before we get a motion? So I have one. It's on J, the amendments to council, I don't know, decorum, I think it's called. And I just want to make sure, it looks to me like it says it's new language on number 6. Focus on the issue being discussed rather than disagreement of ideas by using I statements and avoiding personal attacks or assuming motives of another. And then it adds language both in the meeting and beyond. And then number 7 is new, speak about colleagues and issues with accuracy and truthfulness in all forums. I just want to understand, like for number 6, if I am complaining to my husband about a council meeting, this is saying that I cannot assume motives or say something about a colleague because I'm in the beyond at my house. Is that true? It's just I think I'm going to violate the rule. I'm just going to, I love all of you, but sometimes it's frustrating here.
Mayor Pro Tem Friend, you bring up an excellent point. Would that violate the spirit or the letter of that? Certainly. And if your husband ratted you out, then there would be,
He would never.
Well, but you're right that by a strict reading, it would say that you should not include infer motives in any conversation that you're having.
Okay, thank you. So I will just preview for colleagues. I'm going to vote against the amendments to the rules of decorum because I don't want to commit to complying with them as written. Nicole?
Can I just ask a question about this? Is there a way to edit it? Because where this came up, right, was in a conversation about how we're talking when we're in a public forum like this, or sending out an email, newsletter, or something like that to a bunch of people, right? That those are the kinds of situations. Like, I don't think in our discussion, at least on the July 14th, I don't think it was ever intended that we wouldn't talk to, smaller groups of people, friends, spouses, whoever. So I think, is there a way to modify it at all? And I recognize that I'm asking you to kind of change on the fly, which I know we don't like to do. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of think about it offline or something like that.
Yes, Council and Councilmember Spear. Certainly, the council could vote to continue that particular item to give some additional direction and get some additional clarity and perhaps a change in language. Alternatively, a council member could make a motion to amend, and if you have proposed language, you could propose that here tonight. The third alternative, of course, is that it could move forward tonight as written, and you all could vote on it as is.
Can I colloquy and propose that maybe we move to continue it and ask for language? Maybe we could do a not a 5 for a language change that limits it to sort of when speaking in or communicating in more public forums, however that could look. So I understand newsletters, but if I'm having drinks with friends or chatting with my husband, like I don't think that's the spirit of this. And if we can change it to be more applying to, statements almost as if from the dais that you were communicating to a wide, body or a lot of people that are members of the public. I don't have the language, so I'm not going to propose that tonight. Matt? Well, can we, or just for not a 5 on that, do you mean? Yes, I think, do we need an out of 5 to ask you to rewrite it, or can we just make a motion? Can we include, do we make that motion in, do we need to discuss it? Everybody okay with us carrying it forward? Okay, and then does the motion need to be just part of the motion to pass this consent agenda?
You can make that motion separately.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to pass the consent agenda A through I and continue item J.
Second.
Elisha, is this a roll call?
Yes, it is. Thank you. We'll start this item roll call with Councilmember Folkerts.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Friend.
Yes.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes. Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Wallach.
Yes.
Weiner.
Yes.
Yates.
Yes.
And Benjamin.
Yes.
The consent agenda items A through I are hereby approved, and item J is continued.
Thanks for the flexibility there. Teresa, do we need a not a 5 now?
Yes, if council would like to provide some direction about what they would like to see in item J next time, that would be helpful.
Great. Would anyone like to take a stab at it other than me?
I'll just say that I like where Rachel was going, so if that helps add 2 people in that direction, outside of the private conversation, public forum, social media, newsletters, speaking at events, anything that's in sort of the public record in that capacity should be where this focuses on, not in the private sector. So I second where Rachel's at.
Thanks, Matt. Anyone else want to speak to it? Tara?
I agree.
Great. That's 3. Do you need a show of hands, or let's just do a quick not a 5. Everyone agree that we'll get rewriting in that direction? Great. Thank you.
Thank you for that clear direction.
Thanks for rolling with that to everyone. Back over to Elisha to take us to the next agenda item.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next on tonight's agenda, we have item number 5, which is our public hearing. Item 5A is the consideration of the following items related to the 2023 recommended budget. Our first item is the second reading of and a motion to adopt Ordinance 8535, and that adopts the budget for the City of Boulder. Our second item is the second reading and a motion to adopt Ordinance 8536. That ordinance establishes the 2021 City of Boulder property mill levies. Item number 3 is the second reading and a motion to adopt Ordinance 8537 that appropriates money to defray expenses and liabilities. And the last item on that public hearing list is item number 4, the second reading and consideration of a motion to adopt Ordinance 8538, and that amends the chapters related to fees and changing those fees.
Thank you so much, Elisha. Chris, over to you to kick off this public hearing.
Happy to kick it off, and we're going to send it straight back to Mark. And we did a much further in-depth presentation at first reading, so we have just a very brief presentation and follow-up from first reading. So Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Chris. Mark Wolf, Senior Budget Manager. All right, we do have a shorter presentation this evening because we have shared so much information, as Chris mentioned, back in September at our recommended budget study session. We received feedback from council at that session, brought forward additional information and some changes for the first reading on October 6th. Council made those changes, which we'll briefly review. And here we are again for what could be final adoption of the budget this evening, second public hearing, and you already took care of the district resolutions. So again, just to summarize, the total appropriation across all funds is now at $582.1 million. That includes a general fund of $188.4. That is with the changes noted last meeting in trash management and the contract related to the CVB related to accommodations tax projections. The Community Culture Safety Tax Fund is now at a little over $30 million, $30.5 million. That includes the additional funds to complete Fire Station 3 and correcting the Boulder Junction Improvement Fund. The total 2023 budget as amended, as I mentioned earlier, is at that $515.4 million. The budget does include a number of exciting investments. We've heard these many times, but it's always nice to remember what is in that large package, which includes a continuation of many core services, our investments in city staff, wildfire resilience efforts and emergency response, piloting a new behavioral health response program, many homelessness services, including piloting our new day services center, safe and managed spaces investments, and advancing key infrastructure investments, including major CCRS projects and the facilities master plan. You've seen this slide several times, but this is to remind everybody that we are in the 3-year process improvement for our budgeting to get better in terms of articulating our outcomes and measuring our investments and the impact of those investments. So again, the implementation of OpenGov, our new transparency tool, is a big part of that. In year 1, we have begun to talk about outcomes within our budgeting process, and we'll continue to implement that as we move into year 2 and begin to talk more about what measurements we need to really determine our progress to make decisions based off of that data and information. I bring that up because that was a highlight of October 6th in talking through our various different investments, especially as we were talking about our Safe and Managed Spaces program. We did provide a hotline a post on this, but just for council and community to hear a little bit more about this. We have done some work to summarize the activities in this area, especially in refining what we mean by outcomes. It's a little bit convoluted, but here is a good example of looking at the program and what we intend to measure in terms of effectiveness. So our outputs would be something like the pounds of trash removed. Our outcomes would be more strategic. In this example, would be campsite resident engagement with services. So again, a little bit more towards what we're intending to accomplish with our investments. So the work that has started and will continue over the next several months will consider items like harm reduction in public spaces, maximize our service connections through all city touch points, look at innovative approaches that go beyond our current programming to support collective citywide efforts. And all of this will come back to council as a part of the February 2023 program update on safe and managed public spaces to really dive into those enhanced metrics. And so this is a really good example of what we intend to do across our many program investments throughout the city. And then the other item that received a lot of attention. We started to have our ARPA conversation a bit 2 weeks ago. And so we just wanted to provide a little bit of a preview of what that conversation may look like. So as council remembers, we have had a conversation around initial ARPA goals. Then we talked about initial investments in what we called Tranche 1. Then we had a little bit longer conversation about Tranche 2 appropriations or investments. And we previewed, or I suppose we made recommendations on Tranche 3, or what would be the last group of initiatives that we would fund through ARPA. So that's what we intend to discuss at our next touch point. We do appreciate the flexibility in pushing that out 2 weeks. So we're currently scheduled to have that full discussion on December 1st, I believe, where we'll be revisiting the prioritization criteria and original goals. So again, to help us make decisions about what those investments might be. Review our previous appropriations and update progress on where the dollars have gone and some of the successes that we've seen. We will discuss the repurposing of the available dollars under the public health reserve. So that was about $500,000 that we talked about that would be available for some type of other investment. And then review previous Tranche 3 spending recommendations. So you provided some initial direction back in February, March timeframe. And so that's what we're bringing back, is to confirm that those are the investments and obviously receive direction on the rest of the dollars. And we'll have a recommendation on what needs to be appropriated versus what might be subject to future conversations and so on and so forth. Sorry, I'll stay in front of the mic. So a lot to discuss. We will try to put as much information as possible into the upcoming memo. And tee up that discussion for December 1st for our next round of ARPA funding, which will include a number of different items, but certainly those items that were discussed 2 weeks ago related to looking at additional arts investments. There was a lot of discussion about basic needs in the human services realm. Those types of conversations would be what we're planning on diving into in a bit more detail when we get to December 1st as a part of that ARPA Tranche 3 discussion. And that is the end of the presentation. Hand it back over to Rachel.
Thanks so much, Mark. Any questions on the presentation? We're going to go right into the public comment then. Okay. Do we, will Brenda reread? Or do we call that good for the night? Do you reread you're on mute.
Sorry, we can. We have had quite a few people join us for this portion who were not here earlier online, but
I see.
But I do imagine that many of the names I'm seeing are familiar with our guidelines. So I think we might be okay, Mayor Pro
Awesome.
Tem.
Let me just do a quick show of hands. Did anybody in here not listen or was not here to hear the sort of rules of decorum for public comment? I think everybody in the room got it. So maybe you could just drop it in the chat online, and then we'd be good. For anybody who wasn't there for it.
We don't have a chat box activated for the general public and webinar.
We're going to hope for the best. Please be nice in your comments to avoid. Well, I can't even summarize it. So let's hope for the best. Okay, we're going to start with our in-chamber speakers now. So first three will be Elaine Donmiller, Emily Reynolds, and Shayna Larson. And you don't have to be nice. That would be against your First Amendment rights. So say what you're here to say, please.
There goes my speech. All right. Hello, Council. I'm here once again asking you to recognize the critical importance of the camping ban for the safety of everyone in the community. I urge you to support the additional funding needed to make these cleanups happen. As a community, we create rules for shared public spaces. We heard the rules earlier for this shared public space. 2 minutes, use your real name, don't use expletives, don't go on the dais. If I feel like taking 5 or 10 minutes, I'm fairly certain that I will be cut off and asked to respect everyone else's opportunity to speak. And if I were to hop up on the dais to use rude language, braid your hair, I would be escorted from this building. And boy, did we see earlier how quickly that was enforced, right? And it should be, as it should be, because it's for your safety and for the order of this shared public space. So we need to start enforcing these rules for our community, for shared public spaces. Boulder has become a destination for illegal camping due to lax enforcement of our camping ban, as well as a lack of consequences for criminal acts. Some of our worst serial offenders have no local addresses, but their IDs come from North Dakota, Florida, Texas, Kentucky, California. They literally, and I mean literally, tell the Boulder police, "I'm here for the camping." Those teenagers camping on the roof of the library over the summer were here for the camping. Some of them say they're here for the quality of the drugs, and they can do these things and steal all right out in public. There seems to be a shifting ability to even see encampments. Some people can see them when they want to solicit more millions of dollars, but when a community member shares their harmful experience, suddenly those same solicitors are saying, "Encampments? What encampments? I don't see them." So the denial that encampments exist, that they cause community harm, and the denial of the huge role of dangerous meth and fentanyl to all populations within our community are obstacles to finding a solution. But the role of the camping ban is not to solve homelessness. It's to keep our public spaces clean, safe, and managed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elaine, and the jazz hands. Next up is Emily Reynolds. And Elaine, I want to thank you for really going over our rules of decorum within your speech. So that was perfect. Emily Reynolds and Shayna Larson and Mary Horrocks.
Good evening, Council. Great to see you. I'd like to thank the majority of Council, the 7 members who supported the expansion of the encampment cleanup crews at the first public hearing and vote on October 6th. As stated in our city website, the City Council holds public meetings to gather feedback from community members. So at least 7 members of Council heard our feedback. We heard speaker after speaker talk about how their children feel safer biking on Arapahoe rather than taking a bike path for a few hundred yards, where they will be intimidated, yelled at, threatened, lunged at. We heard how residents no longer feel safe downtown on Pearl Street at the Bandshell, walking the creek path, going to the farmer's market. To sum up, you heard about residents that no longer feel safe in their own town, downtown. We're no longer able to enjoy our own city. Tourists don't fare a lot better. Consider the older couple walking in Central Park a few weeks ago, where the woman was thrown to the ground by her hair, by some glassy-eyed camper. Consider the 2 shootouts on the Hill recently. City government already receives $500 million from taxes and fees on Boulderites. And of course, there are the gigantic increases you intend for us on this year's ballot. Yet we hear that the paltry amount to clean up the illegal encampments is at risk. Can't you agree to do the bare minimum in keeping Boulder safe and clean? Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Next, Shayna Larson, Mary Horrocks, and Sherry Hack. And again, if the on-deck people could move towards the front, that just helps keep the flow moving.
Good evening. My name is Shayna Larson, and I'd like to first say thank you to the Council for supporting the arts. I'm here tonight not only to encourage you to increase funding for the arts, but to show you a real-life example of what happens with your support. My husband and I relocated our young family to Boulder 10 years ago. In 2014, I noticed a neighbor had a yellow open studio sign in her yard. New in town, we didn't know any of our neighbors, but decided to walk in. We were blown away by the paintings and drawings on every square inch of Bobby's home studio. From that day forward, my daughter and I have spent hours every fall touring local artist studios. After our 3rd year of touring, I found myself yearning to go back to creating and pick up a paintbrush myself. I'll never forget that moment. The world seemed to pause around me. Like a scene from a movie, I am meant to paint. Just 1 year after I picked up my brush, my 8-year-old daughter discovered encaustic painting on the Open Studios tour. She said to me, "Mama, this is what kind of art I want to make." I promptly signed her up for Marco's class, and she's been painting every week since. And this year, for the first time, I was an artist on the tour. From this sweet story, 2 impactful things have happened. First, I had no idea how therapeutic painting was going to be for my daughter and I during the hardest chapter of our lives. when we were all locked down and my father died from COVID, we were feeling like the world was ending, and we painted. Our art became our touchstone and gave us hope, connected us to the community, and gave us a way to grieve. Secondly, my artwork has turned into a successful little small business in Boulder. I shop locally at Gyrie's for my supplies. I work with 2 Boulder woodworkers to make custom panels and frames. And I've sold dozens of paintings to people around Boulder County and around the world. Funding the arts may seem small, but my daughter and I demonstrate the positive impact that art can have on our community. Thank you in advance for your support.
Thanks, Shayna, and I'm sorry for your loss. Next, Mary Horrocks, Sherry Hack, and then both Karen Okada and Michael Nicely will just need to raise his hand to show that he's here. Mary?
Hi. Excuse me. I'm Mary Horrocks. I'm the executive director for Open Studios, and I also served at the Dairy Arts Center as curator for visual art for 7 years. We appreciate your hard work and financial support, the work of the arts commissioners and the arts and culture staff. At the Dairy in 2014, we produced an ambitious program called Veterans Speak. It gave voice to military veterans from World War II, Vietnam, Desert Storm, and Afghanistan through art. Veterans Speak was one of my most powerful and profound experiences. We changed lives with that program. I listened at the last council meeting to stories of problems with the homeless, thinking about Open Studios outreach programs and what they might offer to help. We run 7 programs. The Studio Tour is a free educational program for all members of the public with 8,000 people attending each year. 20% come from outside of Boulder, including neighboring states. People buy art, dine in restaurants, shop, stay in hotels, all raising sales tax revenues. Our community outreach programs serve disadvantaged residents and school kids, paying artists to provide services, helping them to make a living. Art helps people take pride in who they are. Art provides income for artists. In 2016, we were receiving $20,000 per year from the Arts Commission. The program has changed since then because of funding, and we now qualify just for $10,000 each year, half of what we once could get. Not because we do less or we're smaller, we have grown and we do more, but grant amounts have changed. In 2016, we had 2 employees. Now we can afford only 1. We support artists with opportunities to make a living. We support the public, encouraging creativity, essential to a healthy community. Our artists are generous with their time and talent. They donated art for fundraisers, netting $5,000 for the King Soopers Victims Fund and $4,000 for Marshall Fire Relief. Additional funding from the city would give an exponential ROI, enabling us to hire project managers, to leverage volunteers, get more done with less stress and burnout of our precious human capital. With more funding, we'll find creative ways to solve problems. That's what artists do.
Thanks,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Next up, Sherry Hack, and then Karen Okada, and then Alaya Garcia Grau.
Hi, I support the budget for continuing the cleanup for the encampments. And I want to point out that now you're hearing from high school parents, and you're hearing from high school kids. And don't you think these kids have something better to do than come to a city council meeting to tell you how they feel unsafe and how the parents... I mean, you have parents who are telling you their kids are affected by the camps that are right behind Boulder High. You know, it's just, it's sad. And you know, it's ironic because you try to protect us from sugary drinks with the beverage tax. Like if I want to buy a Gatorade in Boulder, I have to pay extra. But you won't protect us from the crime and the filth and the toxic waste that surrounds these encampments. I think it's disgraceful. Your lack of caring for the kids and for the parents and for the whole community regarding these public safety issues. You know, I had this boss a long time ago. She was great, and she had this saying. She used to say, when something wasn't working out at work, she'd say, "What's the damn deal?" And I'm going to say that to you tonight. I know it sounds a little corny, but it's like, I want to say something stronger, but the rules of decorum won't let me. But you just need to step up and do your jobs. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Next, we have Karen Okada, who looks to be pooling with Michael. Please use your jazz hands. Michael, that hand raise, nicely, sorry. Okay, so Karen, you will have 5 minutes with the pool time. Staff, please correct me if I got that wrong.
Thank you, Boulder.
And let me just say, Michael, you're welcome to stand there, but you don't have to. I just needed to confirm your presence.
Thank you. Thank you, Boulder City Council. My name is Karen Okada. I am an artist, and I also am a newer member of Open
Make sure you're
Studios.
speaking into the mic. I'm getting the waves from the back row.
Is
Thank
this
you.
better? Okay. I'm a newer member of Open Studios. I have joined them maybe in June of 2021, but honestly, I can tell you that for myself, it has changed just everything about how I feel about myself and my own art. I participate, as I said, as an artist and as a staff member. And what I wanted to do, if you haven't already been to our pop-up gallery, I kind of wanted to take you on a little tour of our gallery, because it's pretty interesting, because you see all types of art and every type of the discipline. It's a gallery that's open to all and ranges in ages as artists from 19 to 94. You will experience our beloved Flatirons, our Aspens, the Chautauqua Park that we all love, and the wildlife and the bears that we kind of are seeing everywhere now. And I just want to say that you will view the practice, professionalism in every type of art. There are casual customers that are very curious from the St. Regis. CU students with their families, professionals visiting that have probably working here for a few days. A lot of them are very familiar with our Open Studios tour and what we do. I like to think our Open Studios like our Boulder Farmers Market. We are all homegrown, and we are we make art for all of us to share. And it is all about our Boulder life experiences. We become all ambassadors for Boulder. We live our city. We tell everybody about the restaurants to go to when they come in the gallery. We're proud of our plein air event, of course, our Open Studio tour. We have mobile labs. We have the EdLink to our public schools. We always make an appearance to any of the Boulder festivals, helping and any of the crafts for kids, and we have sales training. And of course, when the unfortunate circumstances happen, as the Marshall Fire, we are there to help. All of this is a labor of love. This is what we're doing it for. I think you as council members know that very, very well. Getting back to what I do is I look at everything as a magnifying glass. This past weekends, I just want to explain to you that our Open Studios tour, we had 164 artists participating. That's amazing. I can honestly say that their return on their investment, this is the conversation we have as artists when they come back into our pop gallery. And I think for myself, I am grateful for that community. I'm grateful for this teaching community. And I feel like it is something that we all can share. Our dedicated director and our board members, I know, are vigilant to serve our community as well as all of us artists. I just want to ask you to consider funding for Open Studios for 2023. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Maybe you can send us a comment form with the information on a possible gallery tour. I would be interested. I can't speak for colleagues. Thanks. Okay, next up we have Olaya Garcia Grau, and then Valerie Love and Mary Madera. Oh, well, that was I had that for Karen and Michael Nicely. And it was pooled time, so you collectively had 5 minutes. And that's pooled. Please, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. Good evening. I would first like to thank you for listening, for your time, and for your consideration. Alaya and I are musicians.
Can you move into the mic?
Yeah,
I can't hear you in the back. Thanks.
Okay. Alaya and I are musicians in the Greater Boulder Youth Orchestras, which is an organization here in Boulder that provides supportive orchestral experience for young musicians. At first, learning to work with such a large group of people and to be in harmony with them was really hard for me because, it was hard to listen across the section and, to the rhythm and the cellos that would keep me as a violinist steady. And I generally relied on my own sense of pulse, which would sometimes fluctuate. So that didn't go very well at the first rehearsal. But as I attended rehearsals, I let myself trust in the community that surrounded me. So I trusted that if I fell off rhythm, they would bring me back to the correct one. I also established empathy with the people that were struggling there, who were having trouble maybe expressing themselves a little bit musically, artistically. And because I'd been there too, right? I'd been there as an orchestral musician as well. And for me, I guess delving into the arts created an environment of safety in a world where middle and high school age students spend so much of their time online and kind of disconnected. So, thank you. Sorry.
Just to follow up on that, I'm also a member of GYO. I'm a cellist. I think.
Make sure you're right in the
sorry.
mic.
The arts have taught me so much. I think I've played the cello since I was 6 years old. The arts have taught me skills of discipline and how to be in a community with other members of an orchestra and an ensemble. I've played with GU. I've played in orchestras all my life. So I'm just here to say how important the arts are to us youth and to so many people in Boulder, Colorado. So I would appreciate funding for the arts. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Valerie Love, then Mary Madera and Tim Thomas.
Hi, thanks again for letting me speak. So I think we can all agree Boulder needs way more cleanup. Have you ever had success bribing a teen to keep their room clean? Next. It is so frustrating. It doesn't work. Next. Because of current laws and poor mental health care access, our city has turned into an unsafe, filthy mess. Next. We cannot expect those who are suffering to keep it clean and safe. Next. It's the responsibility of the city to keep the city clean and safe. Next. When a city is filthy and unsafe, it loses valuable tax dollars. Businesses and residents leave. Next. When a city is filthy and unsafe, it attracts predators. Next. When a city is filthy and unsafe, vulnerable people get hurt. Next. When a city is filthy and unsafe, it means the city is not doing its job. Next. Have you ever missed a day of brushing your teeth? Next. What about 7 days? It creates an environment for rot and decay. Next. The city needs to pass more funding for daily comprehensive professional cleanup. Next. So the tax dollars from businesses, residents, and students stay. Next. Otherwise, I heard there's something called a recall that taxpayers can do. Next. The city is responsible to keep Boulder clean. Please pass more funding, for safe and managed public spaces. Next. Until we can solve the mental health and addiction crisis, we need to at least keep Boulder safe and clean for everyone, especially the vulnerable populations. So sorry these slides were a little off because I did Canva, but the whole point is when we have the safe, beautiful environment, it promotes people feeling good and wanting to stay here and get better. When it's dirty and gross, that's how we all feel. So if we do not have a clean environment for everybody, including the vulnerable populations, we are not going to be able to have success because they're going to keep going back into a yucky, unsafe, filthy environment, and they're going to feel filthy about themselves. So please pass more funding to keep Boulder clean. Thanks.
Thanks, Valerie. Next, Mary Madera, Tim Thomas, and then Michael Hammers. We we really ask that you not make noise in affirmation or against people who are speaking. Thanks.
Good evening. Hi, City Council. Thank you for all the support you've given the arts in the past, and I hope it continues to grow. I was here 2 weeks ago and did not succeed, so I'm back again to ask you to support the arts. My name is Mari Madeira, and I run a music education program for the under-resourced children in Boulder. And BAC has supported us since our inception in 2015, and so thank you. We're very grateful for that. Our program provides music education to the underprivileged, overlooked silent minority of this town. We all know how important studying music is to young minds, both academically and developmentally. This helps create successful members of our society. I wish you could see the looks on these students' faces when they see and hold a violin or a saxophone or a cello for the very first time. Then for them to continue and have lessons, learn to play, and make beautiful sounds is truly an enlightening experience for everyone. Without our program, these kids would be deprived of yet another opportunity. Although we've been blessed with a GOS grant and additional funding from other Boulder foundations, we definitely need more funding for the arts to employ artists, create more venues for performances and displaying art. For Muse, costs keep increasing for such thing as paying teachers who struggled to live in Boulder because of rents being so high or owning a home, and purchasing and repairing instruments. I implore you to increase funding for the arts so that our program and others can create a level playing field for all children. We believe that all children have the right to study music and art regardless of their socioeconomic status. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks so much, Mary. Next, Tim Thomas, and then Michael Hammers. And the next person on the list is Catherine Muller, who I should have confirmed was pooling with Karen Okada. So, Catherine, you won't have to step up now because that's my mistake. Tim Thomas, you're up.
The importance of these budget discussions is one of the main reasons why I'm opposed to even-year elections. Please read my op-ed piece posted on the Daily Camera. I, a justice and sustainability advocate, received text from a Planned Boulder representative and a prominent member of the business community today, joining me in opposition to moving local elections to even years. I also want to thank each and every one of you for meeting with me one-on-one over the past year or so. While I believe there's several changes that need to be made to the budget process, I would start with this. I would start by sending an independently administered survey to all residents of the City of Boulder's Housing Authority, Boulder Housing Partners, and then hire an independent auditor to examine their operations. My newest public hero is Tim O'Brien, the city auditor of Denver. The auditor website says the independent audit function serves as a tool for good government, transparency, and accountability in the city. This year's audit plan incorporates risk-based performance, financial, information technology, cybersecurity, contract compliance, and audit analytics. That's what this, Denver does. We do not. BHP operates under the lax rules and flexible financial model called moving to work. They have very little oversight at the federal and state level. All residents, such as myself, can hope for is that the City Council instructs staff to send out a survey to see their level of satisfaction and concerns that they have. Well, I have time left. So it's just very important. We don't do zero-based budgeting. We don't do performance audits. No disrespect to the different department head, but the budget process is one of, this is what I got last year. You add some more money to it, and that is our budget process. It's unsustainable. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next up, Michael Hammers, Jennifer Rhodes, and Georgia Schmid.
I'm Mike Hamers, and I've been an artist for 47 years. A passion for art. I was concerned early that one couldn't thrive financially as an artist, so I earned a degree in commercial art. From there, I worked as a tech illustrator to the manufacturing sector for 20 years. Then the computer and digital revolutions came. CAD systems ended traditional tech artist positions. So I learned how to use computers and founded Lightspeed Commercial Arts in 1992. Today I'm still self-employed as Lightspeed. Hard hit by the recession in 2009, I struggled to stay solvent. I slid into a suicidal depression and started to self-medicate with vodka in an attempt to feel normal again. 3 years later, I joined AA, where I met many artists, poets, and musicians. Through this fellowship, I rediscovered the joy of poetry, music, and making fine art again. I experienced a creative renaissance that I'm still enjoying 10 years later. Grateful for my rebirth, I created a series of artist and recovery group art shows. Venues included the Firehouse Art Center, NCAR, and eventually the Dairy Art Center with the Art as Medicine show. Artist statements included openly shared how art was part of their recovery. A local reporter stated how this show was one of the best she'd ever seen and how she had never cried at an art show before. Art is powerful medicine and directly tied to the health of a community. Research has proven that a trip to an art gallery or museum can positively impact your health and well-being, lowering anxiety and depression, boosting critical thinking skills, and increased satisfaction with life. They've shown that looking at art gets those exact same health benefits as those making the art. A challenge, though, is that most artists are starving artists. Too many living hand to mouth. Artists need help with housing and work opportunities. We're not out of the pandemic yet, while there are still so many suffering with isolation, depression, addiction, and suicide. Funding the arts is an investment in the mental health of the whole community. It's good medicine for the hearts, minds, and souls of all.
Thanks, Michael. Your time's up.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Rhodes, Georgia Schmid, and Holland Channon.
Hi. I come to this meeting as a concerned member of the community. I'm a mom and a psychiatrist with years of experience treating mental illness, drug addiction, and advocating for women's rights. I moved here because I thought it was a safe, clean, and outdoor-oriented community. I wanted my kids to grow up riding their bikes to school or hanging out by the creek. The lifestyle I and so many others want for their families is rapidly slipping away. By not supporting the police and not supporting the removal of illegal camping in our public spaces, you are turning your backs on our children, saying safety is not a priority in Boulder. The safety of our kids is at risk. Laws are not enforced. Our public spaces are being taken over. Camping in the city is illegal, but it is not enforced. Using drugs is illegal, but this law is not enforced. Vandalism is illegal, but nothing is done. We no longer live in a safe city. Kids get chased all the time near Boulder High. A girl was assaulted just last week while waiting for the bus. Another one chased with a knife. My own children, both of them, have been harassed multiple times. Boulder High has so many encampments surrounding it and so many adults abusing drugs swarming just outside school premises. Teens get pulled into the downward spiral of drugs when drugs are all around them. A 14-year-old girl who recently went missing had unfettered access to drugs and a safe place to do them within the encampments just outside her school. I am all for helping people who are unhoused who want services. I wish taxes were increased so we could offer more effective services. But giving people the right to camp illegally and continue to use drugs on our streets is not supporting their human rights. It is condoning illegal behavior, speeding up their own deterioration within society, isolating them further into poverty to a point of no return, and they are taking the city and our children down with them. Whatever this approach is, it is not working. Enforce the laws, clean up the encampments, offer real services to people experiencing homelessness, and let's have a safe community again for our children.
Thanks, Jennifer. I sure loved the jazz hands, guys. Next will be Georgia Schmid, and then Holland Channon and Isabel Rhodes Wallen.
Hi, I'm Georgia Schmid. I am the vice chair on the Boulder Arts Commission. I'm also a dance instructor and programs coordinator at Boulder Ballet. First, I want to thank you for your past and future funds for Boulder Arts Commission. Also, on behalf of Boulder Ballet, I would like to say thank you for the funds that we have received. I am here to ask to increase funds for the Boulder Arts Commission.
Georgia, make sure you're speaking right into the mic, please.
Okay, is this better?
It's great.
I don't want to get my lip gloss on it. So I grew up here in Boulder. I was exposed to the arts through city-funded programs. This really made Boulder a fun place to grow up in. I was taught by people who cared for me. I was taught by people who inspired me. As an adult, I love being a dance teacher. I get to teach the littles at Boulder Ballet, and I get out to public schools and do outreach programs there. I consider it an honor and a privilege. I love caring for and inspiring the people in our community the way I was cared for as a child. And I know that other artists in the community feel the same way. And I believe that funding our artists is an essential component to create a caring and vibrant community. We create safe spaces and experiences that allow us to heal, express, and draw in tourists, boosting economic longevity. So I like to be really specific and bold and dream big. So I want to ask that you would consider $500,000 or more. And if you're interested in how we allocate that, you can come to Arts Commission meeting anytime. Aside from living in Boulder, I've lived in many different places, and my favorite places to live were places that had vibrant art scenes. I found them the most healthy communities, and I met the most interesting people doing the most great work in their communities. And I believe Boulder to be one of those places, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Georgia, and thanks for your service on our commission. Next, Holland Shannon, Isabel Rhodes-Wallen, and Deborah Malden.
Hello, Council. I'm Holland Shannon. I'm a junior at Boulder High School. When I was 14, on 2 separate days, back to back, in broad daylight, my friend and I were chased by a man with a knife on Pearl Street. The second day this happened to me, I was passing out lunches to people asking for money. They were good lunches, too, that I made with my own money. When we called the police, they said they knew who it was and that this had been happening to other people as well. They filed a case and took no further action. After this happened, I was terrified to walk in public places without a trusted boy or adult with me. I assumed the adults in this city would do something to protect us kids, but it only got worse, and I feel more scared than ever. Even my high school is not safe. I have found syringes and needles on my school property. Most of my friends have had scary experiences with one of these people in Boulder, but feel hopeless speaking up because the adults don't do anything about it. Even one of my taller guy friends got a death threat on the bus going to school. Walking around Boulder High School to get to the hill with my friends after class, we always walk past these angry-looking men, and it scares us. On Sunday, I showed my friend's mom the spot, and she and I were chased and threatened directly behind my own school where I'm supposed to be safe. I've lived here almost my whole life, and when I was little, I felt safe here. I don't anymore. I lived with my mom in Florida for a few months last year, and it was beautiful because everyone took care of the community. There was no encampments or people doing drugs in the open. Nobody wanted to mess with a place that looked so clean. I can't say the same about Boulder. You know when you drive past a police officer when you're speeding and then you go the speed limit? We should do the same thing in Boulder with police officers around my school so it can have the same effect. Please fund a lot more cleanup. Please do your #1 job and make Boulder safe and clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Isabel Rhodes-Wallen, Deborah Malden, and Jonathan Singer.
Okay. My name is Isabel Rhodes-Wallen. I'm a 12-year-old girl. Sometimes when going home from school, I'm out of breath because I run so fast on the bike path from the bus stop because I'm scared. People have come up to me asking me about drugs, and I've seen people yelling and being aggressive and who sound scary and maybe are doing drugs. Do you think a 12-year-old girl should be scared to walk through a park during the day? Do you think a 12-year-old girl should be running home because she's afraid someone is going to hurt her? Walking to school should feel safe. Parks should feel safe. It shouldn't feel unsafe for kids. Can you imagine being a parent in this situation? getting a call that something happened to your child while they walked home from school. Now people won't use the bike paths or parks. You don't want your kids in these places, and then less and less people use these spaces because they are scared. So the bike path becomes more of a problem because the dangerous people are winning. Now I ask again, do you think a 12-year-old and lots of other people should not feel safe on a bike path in other public spaces? Because if we don't feel safe, what is the point of having a bike path at all? What is the point of having a bike path that students don't feel comfortable using? What is the point of a bike path if we're not going to take care of it? What is the point if we let it be littered on? If we don't take care of our spaces and make them feel safe again, if these spaces were for our community, but our community feels in danger, what is the point of these spaces at all? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Isabel. Deborah Malden, Jonathan Singer, and Sarah Parkinson.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of Create Boulder. We respectfully request an additional $350,000 for the 2023 Arts and Culture budget, the bulk of which would bolster the grants program. This additional funding would bridge the gap between the funding outlined in the cultural plan and what is truly needed today. We are deeply grateful that Council has supported the funding targets of the cultural plan, but the world has changed since 2016. And arts organizations and artists, like their colleagues in other sectors, cannot operate successfully based on plans made over 6 years ago. The arts are continuing to recover from the pandemic while also struggling to manage the impacts of inflation. Working to rebuild, organizations face pressure to maintain low, or in some cases free, ticket and class prices so they remain accessible. At the same time, operating costs have increased significantly. In real dollars, the city's arts grants program provides 23% less than in 2016. Decades of research show that the arts are an investment that returns economic, social, and educational benefits. Because of these proven benefits, competition for artists, and arts offerings is growing as communities across the state prioritize the arts and make investments at unprecedented levels to build a thriving arts ecosystem. These communities include Loveland, Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, Trinidad, Ridgeway, Basalt, and Crested Butte. In closing, an additional $350,000 is needed now and would be deeply meaningful to the numerous arts organizations, artists, and arts educators that improve our community in ways that are both tangible and immeasurable and are very much needed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deborah. Next, we'll have Jonathan Singer, and then wrapping up our in-chambers testimony will be Sarah Parkinson and Sam Yu.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Jonathan Singer, and I'm the Senior Policy Program Director with the Boulder Chamber. Before I begin, I just want to thank all the youth that have come out to speak today. It's inspiring to hear from you, and also all the advocates for our art community as well. With that being said, Boulder Chamber is working intensively right now with our business community to ensure the safety and public health of our entire community. Our business owners are struggling to hire, retain, and keep their workers, in part because of concerns around public safety. At the same time, we realize that we need to be fiscally responsible with the dollars that you have. This budget is a moral document. It's a contract you sign with every single community member to say that you are prioritizing their well-being, the physical and economic health of this community. With that being said, we advocate for strategies that enable long-term housing solutions, innovative programs including safe and managed spaces, and at the same time, we need to make sure that dangerous criminal illegal behavior is responded to and enforced. This is a two-pronged approach that's going to require a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. The money in your budget is insufficient, and that's not your fault. It's because our county and our federal government have abdicated their responsibility. So we now need to find a way to work together to find a fair two-pronged solution. I know I mentioned a couple weeks ago that the state has $300 million that they are going to be focusing on affordable housing and also to ameliorate the homeless issue. As that program moves forward, we stand ready to work with you, community members here, and the law enforcement community to solve this problem and do the right thing for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. Sarah Parkinson, and then Sam Yu.
Good evening. My name's Sarah Parkinson. I'm the Executive Director of the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our organization and in support of funding for all arts organizations in Boulder. I would like to thank the hardworking staff in the Office of Arts and Culture and for their steadfast commitment to all of us. And thanks to Mr. Yates especially and Mr. Benjamin for their recent support, voicing their support of funding through the arts in the budgetary process. On October 8th, the Boulder Phil celebrated opening night of its 65th anniversary season, and Governor Jared Polis provided opening remarks on stage with us. And I quote, "It's a great honor to kick off the 22-23 season of the Boulder Philharmonic after all of the tragedies that our community has faced in the past 2.5 years. It is and was the arts and music that have given us comfort and joy in very challenging times. Music is a tool for inspiration and creation, storytelling, and an agent of change," end quote. Not only did Governor Polis join us, but the City of Boulder's own Jonathan Cohen spoke about actionable steps to combat climate change. That was the topic of the event. It was truly a collaborative event between arts and government. Now, a lesson to learn from Governor Polis is that he backs up his words with budgetary decisions that positively impact the lives of arts organizations, as you have done in the past. The SCFD and Colorado Creative Industries have been and continue to be a strong and stable source of funding for many of us. And the Boulder Phil has seen a steady increase of support from both of those entities on an annual basis. Unfortunately, that is not the case of us this year from the City of Boulder, as your orchestra, the Boulder Phil, was left out of the most recent round of GOS grants from the Boulder Arts Commission for the next 3 years. And the Arts Commission made it clear that it wasn't because of our worthiness of funding, it's because there aren't enough funds to support our vibrant arts community. So even though you have already made your decision about the budget, you can still make it right and keep your campaign promises. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Sam Yu, and then we will move to virtual testimony.
Hi, Council, and thank you for having me. And my name is Sam Yu. 30 years ago, I came from Taiwan, and currently I'm the owner of the Rose Hill Wine and Spirit up at the University Hill since 2007. Today last time I'm here, I talk about safety, and this time I'm here, still talk about safety. And anyway, our store, the high-strength double glass door got broke 2 months ago. This is first time happened in 15 years. And this month, my neighbor, gas station, the entrance got broken. So I feel like I do need to say something or do, try to do something to make it better. So I try to provide the information and one maybe naive solutions. So the information is these homeless people, they come in groups, and they are not from Colorado. They're from other states, and they fought. They fought for the territory. So that's why, we have constantly a lot of fightings, for these groups. Sometimes they have more than 20 homeless people. They fought, and you know what? One day, one of them they come to me and say, hey Sam, I'm going to move. I'm going to the San Francisco. I say, wow, that's great. It's good for you. I was so happy for these homeless going to move away. And you know what? And he said, don't get too excited. The next group is coming from Texas. It's more aggressive now. So it's kind of pretty sad. And now, my solution is this. Okay, why don't we use part of the fundings to feed them up, give them the tickets, and send them to San Francisco.
Thank you, Sam. Your time is up. Thank you. We are going to move now to virtual, so I'll look to Brenda. And we'll say again to audience members, I think what I'm hearing is that we would really like people to comply with societal rules, and the rule that we have in here is that we please don't don't make audible noises in responses to people's testimony. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. That does really support our atmosphere of keeping things welcoming and inclusive of all political perspectives. So I also offer that reminder, as well as reminders about obscenities and particularly racial epithets and other types of speech that might disrupt the meeting tonight. So we will start with Connie Brenton, followed by Jan Burton, followed by Lynn Siegel. So Connie, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, I'm Connie Brenton. I was born and raised in Boulder. I have owned a small business on the downtown mall for the last 25 years. I am shocked by the seeming disregard for public safety by the current city council. This is a topic rarely mentioned or even responded to in meetings. It's dangerous to be on the Pearl Street Mall, as we've heard tonight, the bike paths, and many areas of our community. The majority of the city council seem to prioritize those coming here from out of the area and residing in illegal encampments beyond the consideration of our children, our community members, local businesses, and tourists. My young staff are faced with crime and safety issues on a regular basis, including threatening behavior within the store and while getting to public transportation or their vehicles. Recently, our store manager returned to her car to find the back windshield smashed in. Her car was one of 4 that night that the perpetrator was a woman who the Boulder police knew by name. Another employee, a Boulder High School student, left the store in broad daylight and was threatened and assaulted by a man at a nearby bus stop. He grabbed her by her hair and her throat, and she rebuffed his sexual advances. She doesn't want to report the incident because she knows what will happen. Nothing. Within the past week, numerous local businesses have experienced break-ins, theft, vandalism, smashed storefront windows, some for the 3rd and 4th time, including us. This is becoming the norm and seemingly accepted way of life with no consequences for criminals. I encourage council to start making policy decisions that promote better safety for everyone. Approving this budget tonight will help facilitate the hiring of more police officers and encampment cleanup staff, which is critically needed. These efforts are necessary to keep our community safe, which really should be your #1 priority. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie.
And next we have Jan Burton, followed by Lynn Siegel, followed by Elizabeth McGuire. I do have a name on my list I'm not yet seeing in the meeting. Kim Smouse, you would be our 5th virtual speaker. If you are here, please reach out to me in the Q&A so I can get your name changed and we can get you in the right spot in line. But now we will go to Jan Burton.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jan Burton from Create Boulder. Boulder City Council approved the cultural plan when I was on council in 2016. It was a great first step for improving cultural life in this city, and city funding has improved since that time. However, one mistake we made was not building in inflation adjustments for organizational grants. Surely, council would have approved that if it had been recommended. We now see what a big issue it is, as salaries, production, and other costs for cultural organizations are skyrocketing, and city funding has not changed and in some cases has been lowered. Performing arts and visual arts organizations are suffering because ticket sales have not recovered from pre-COVID levels. They also struggle from the lack of affordable performing and workspace, and some organizations find it more difficult to raise money due to other unique circumstances like the Marshall Fire. The Boulder operating budget is increasing at 18%, with inflation adjustments to take care of your staff salaries and cost escalations. But other than public art line item, the arts and culture budget is flat. Some of our foundational arts organizations, like you just heard from the Boulder Phil, many with a history of more than 30 or even 60 years, were not even funded for general operating support grants, impacting them for 3 years. Arts and culture artists and musicians can help Boulder as we emerge from COVID, fires, mental challenges, and more. You've heard from many of them tonight. Many of you on council have said you support the arts. We'd love to see leadership by Matt and Bob, who mentioned support for the arts, and more of you by finding more money in the 2023 budget, ARPA funding, and future funding opportunities. We stand ready to support you. Thank you for your service and for your consideration.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, Jan. Next, we have Lynn Siegel, followed by Elizabeth McGuire, and then Kim Smouse, who is here.
Hi, Lynn. You know, the budget is like in the winter, opening the front door and turning up the heat. Now, I'd be ready to support this budget if I saw less subsidy to the developers that cause the wealth inequality that you've heard rampant discussion at with open comment and the budget. And it's going probably into the drought discussion tonight because it's all connected. You can't continue on this course. You know I don't support this council. You know I don't support your policy, but I'm going to say it again and again, and maybe so the public can understand that the increased inflation for the arts for the budget with Jan Burton right now is not there because you're not directing the funds the right way. You're subsidizing the developer. I know. I follow 8 city boards. I see it all the time. Another third story, another giveaway to CU, just like with CU South. Another giveaway. The Hill Hotel. There's got to be a hotel across the street too for CU with a 15,000 square foot ballroom. Growth creates greater inequality, creates the need for trash cleanup and all the expense, and that expense will be endless. And you will keep on hearing these discussions over and over and over again, like you always do. What are you doing? Shame on you. You've heard it from the public. There's a solution. And it's not giving more funding. It's stopping the demand for homeless with your wealth inequality policy.
Lynn, your time is up.
Done.
Thank you. And please, if you have further comments, Lynn, please send them into City Council using the online form. Elizabeth McGuire, followed by Kim Smouse, followed by Ben Needham Wood. Elizabeth, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening. I am Elizabeth McGuire. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Music Festival and Center for Musical Arts, as well as a member of the Boulder County Arts Alliance Board of Directors. You may recognize the Colorado Music Festival as an internationally renowned performing arts organization. If you're not familiar, we were recently featured in the cover story of the Sunday Arts edition of the New York Times, in BBC Music Magazine, in a story that highlighted the city of Boulder prominently, and on National Public Radio's Performance Today for our groundbreaking world premiere performances of works created and performed by a diverse cast of world-class musicians. We are in lockstep with Boulder's cultural plan and hopefully a source of great pride in our community. We run an incredibly efficient organization. Our festival, with the artistic quality that can stand up to any festival of its type in the world, operates on a comparative shoestring. I've spent 25 years in arts management, approximately 6 of those in Boulder, and I can assuredly tell you that all of the arts organizations in Boulder provide well above our budget class in this way and offerings to the community. We bring so much and really do receive very little comparatively. Our arts organizations are currently in crisis. While we're pinched by the rising costs, still experiencing some pandemic-related attendance issues, we still have to meet the demand of living wages and exponential increase in venue costs. In our case, a venue owned by the city of Boulder itself. Many of us have to decide how we can cut back in order to remain solvent. This is the time. These rising venue costs resonate throughout the Boulder arts community and threaten our very health and ability to provide our life-changing and community-building programs. Supporting arts venue operations has proven to be a great financial investment for cities due to spending and tax revenues associated with arts audiences. I ask that you consider increasing support today to match today's needs. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and for your work.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And next we will have Kim Smouse, followed by Ben Needham, and then Katie Elliott. Kim, you should be able to unmute now.
Hi, my name is Kim Smouse. I'm a Boulder resident and a board member of Open Studios. Thank you, Council, for supporting the arts, and thank you to the Office of Arts and Culture for your excellent work. Boulder arts organizations provide exemplary programming and are in desperate need of additional funding. In the last few years, Open Studios has faced challenges fundraising not only due to COVID shutdowns, but more recently by the Marshall Fire. Open Studios has been struggling to keep our programs afloat. Thank you for funding the amounts specified in the 2016 Community Cultural Plan, but the arts need more funding. We are not out of the woods from the pandemic, and COVID relief funding is no longer available. Funding arts organizations is a proven success in Boulder. The Open Studios Tour and Plein Air Art Festival are both extremely popular Boulder art events, bringing together a significant number of artists and art patrons. With current resources, both events are executed on a shoestring with a group of Open Studios volunteers, community donations, and skeleton staffing. We would use additional funding to bolster project management for these events in order to assure patrons of a positive experience while reducing stress and burnout of our human resources. Arts programming is incredibly important to the health of our community. It has the transformative power to heal. The teen and tween populations in Boulder are clearly suffering from mental health and drug issues. Open Studios has 2 programs specifically designed to reach students and at-risk teens. The Mobile Art Lab brings art making to community gatherings and festivals, and EdLinks provides visual arts programming to the public schools for free. These programs build community and cross barriers of socioeconomic status, race, and age.
Kim, my apologies. We did not start the timer when you began to speak. So if you could just close out your remarks, that would be helpful. I think we started the timer about a minute in.
Okay, thank you. Please consider allocating a portion of the remaining ARPA funds to Boulder arts organizations. And when the 2023 budget is adjusted next year, please consider allocating year-end reserves to our arts organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. And again, my apologies for not accurately giving you your time. Next, we have Ben, followed by Katie Elliott, and then we'll close out with Kathleen McCormick and Travis LaBerge. So Ben, you should be able to unmute now.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Needham Wood, and I'm the newly appointed Artistic Director for Boulder Ballet. Thank you for giving me space to speak tonight, and I'm here to advocate for additional funding for the arts. This is a hard conversation to have because we're essentially trying to put value on paper to something that can't be fully measured, and that's the impact of the arts. We know that we can track tourism dollars, we can track job creation, but what we can't track is the moment when inspiration leads to innovation. Coming out of this pandemic, we are in a moment where innovation is necessary for us to navigate the challenges that we face in our communities. Some of these challenges that I'd like to highlight tonight are community disconnect, social anxiety, and mental health. I myself am someone who can speak directly to the value of art in supporting mental health. I'm an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and it was through the art of dance that I was able to reclaim myself, that I was able to reclaim my body and find a path towards healing that allowed me to become a functional member of society. And what we have shown recently through studies by Mental Health America is that Colorado is currently experiencing some of the most severe cases of mental illness in the United States. With that, we can recognize that this is a moment where we need innovation, we need the arts to help those who are struggling to find their personal path towards healing. While the arts can help us to support us through our traumas, they can also be a source of celebration. And this is what I would love to highlight tonight. The arts are a part of every major ceremony, be it a wedding or something else that's truly spectacular with dance and music. And it's through the arts that we're able to celebrate personally in a moment that is going to resonate with us for the rest of our lives. I hope that this council will consider increasing the funding for the arts for the city of Boulder so that we can continue to find celebrations that allow us to celebrate the progress we make as we look for healing in this very complicated time. Thank you all for the work you do. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing your story with us, Ben. Next, we have Katie Elliott, Kathleen McCormick, and Travis Labarge. Katie, you should be able to unmute.
My name is Katie Elliott, and I am the Artistic Director of Third Law Dance Theater. We've been creating work in our community for over 20 years, and I'm here to advocate for more funding for the arts in our community. We are grateful for city funding, crucial to continue our Dance for Parkinson's program that serves people living with Parkinson's and other mobility considerations. City funding is integral to keeping these classes free and making it available to everyone. City support increased our accessibility to other classes in Spanish. Steady community programs like this have significant collective impact and are a unique opportunity to mitigate the adverse health impacts of social isolation in older adults. Our program is unique as it is offered alongside a professional dance company that connects participants to the cultural landscape of their community and movement through the doorway of artistic expression. Last year, the National Endowment for the Arts released a report with this important finding. Place-based arts and cultural practices grow community well-being, which is not restricted to mental and physical health, but encompasses individual benefits such as happiness and communal creative responses to trauma. That translates directly to the health and vibrancy of a city, making it a desirable region for people to live, grow, create, and spend their recreational time and resources. All arts organizations play a role in this. I hope you will increase the GOS grants budget to strengthen the arts ecosystem of our city. Thank you for your service.
And thank you, Katie. Next, we have Kathleen McCormick, and then we will close out with Travis Labarge. Kathleen, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity and for your support for arts and culture in the 2023 city budget. I'm Kathleen McCormick, and I'm a member of the Boulder Arts Commission, a proud member of the Boulder Arts Commission. I want to thank our arts and culture staff for the wonderful job that they do. I appreciate your funding for public art and the American Rescue Plan Act funds for COVID-19 related impacts on arts organizations, which the Arts Commission a couple months ago used for grants to rehire administrators and artists. Employing more arts administrators and artists will help our arts community recover and will support many local families and businesses. However, we do have some gaps in current funding. I hope you will consider providing at least $300,000 in additional support from the ARPA funds for critical purposes. Examples of how this funding could be used. For example, $192,000 would provide 2 years of general operating support grants for 5 Boulder arts organizations, such as the nationally recognized Boulder Philharmonic and the Boulder Ballet, which qualified for but did not receive grants in our 3-year 2022 cycle because of funding constraints. Another example would be $118,000, which would provide rental subsidies for performing and visual arts organizations facing acute space affordability challenges, as well as youth programs and artist relief projects. Research shows that every dollar invested in the arts generates multiple dollars for its city in economic impact. A thriving arts and culture sector drives residents, workers, and visitors to Boulder's stores, restaurants, and hotels, and is critical to attracting and retaining the creative talent needed for our Boulder businesses. In addition, vibrant arts and cultures activities are key to meeting the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Arts and culture are the backbone of a healthy, inclusive, and resilient community, and I ask that you consider more funding for 2023 as a statement of our city's values. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. And our final speaker of this evening is Travis LaBerge, who I've probably pronounced your name incorrectly this entire time. Travis, my apologies. You should be able to unmute.
Thank you very much. My name is Travis LaBerge, and I've been called a lot worse than Travis LaBarge. I'm the executive director and founder of Parlando School of Musical Arts. Parlando has been providing outreach in Boulder for almost 20 years, and we've been offering music lessons and classes in the Dairy Arts Center for over 15 years. Parlando recently received a general operating support grant from the Boulder Arts Commission. Thank you for supporting this program, and I trust you know that your Office of Arts and Culture is quite simply excellent. I love data, and here are some I'd like to share. Parlando employs over 50 musicians from Boulder and surrounding communities. We provide lessons and classes to over 550 weekly students, down from nearly 800 pre-COVID. We provide tuition assistance to over 100 students per year, and since inception have provided over $600,000 in support to more than 1,700 students, including free lessons for victims of the Marshall Fire. We also provide programming for senior citizens, early childhood students, and neurodiverse members of our community. Last year, we worked with 22 different schools in BVSD, DPS, and JEFCO, providing support to over 1,600 music classes, creating nearly 50,000 student interactions. These students have an 11% higher attendance rate, their GPA is almost a full letter grade higher, and their graduation rate is 24% higher compared to their non-musical peers. Because of inflation, we made the decision not to raise tuition this year, while simultaneously increasing compensation for our teachers by as much as 25%. Because we were able to retain our staff during the pandemic, we did not qualify for the recent administrative rehiring grants. And because we rent space at the Dairy Center, we did not qualify for shuttered venue funding. This has made GOS support all the more valuable to Parlando. We urge City Council to fund the gap that Deborah Malden outlined so that arts organizations like Parlando can continue to contribute to Boulder's artistic, educational, and economic vitality. Simply put, arts organizations need more funding to continue this vital programming that otherwise does not happen. GOS is the catalyst that makes this possible. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Travis. And with that, we come to the close of the public hearing, Mayor Pro Tem.
I mean, you can call me mayor if you want to. I'm kidding. Thank you so much for your help with that, Brenda. Okay, so let's move on and first see if there are any follow-up questions to staff flowing from the public hearing, public testimony. Anyone have questions to staff? Nicole.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone who took time to speak to us tonight. I just had a couple questions for our police department, and I was just wondering, there were a couple of comments that folks made saying that we're not enforcing the camping ban. Somebody said that we're not enforcing drug possession, and I was just wondering if you could speak to that. I think the other comment that was raised was someone had been chased with a knife, and that was a situation that had been known, but they were saying that nothing had been done about that. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Steve Redfern, Deputy Police Chief. Good evening. And I think there's about three in there I'll try to address. So the first one is we do enforce the camping ban, and there are separate entities within the police department that deal with camping. So a patrol officer out on patrol may encounter an unsafe camping and may take enforcement action. That's in their purview, just like it would be if they were to write a traffic ticket or not. Our HOT team, our homeless outreach team, their goal is not enforcement. Their goal is, and I know many of you have met them on cleanups, their goal is more outreach. And then we have we've added more to our encampment team that specifically go out with our partners and do the cleanup. They're there mostly for safety. They're obviously police officers and will take action. But really on those occasions, the majority of that work is to get people into services and things like that. So We do enforce it. I don't have the number of summonses in front of me that we have written, but it does get enforced. It's not always our top priority, depending on who is doing that. The second question, there was a concerning statement that was mentioned on the public call about an incident that occurred where someone was attacked and they didn't report that to the police. And I will just say very clearly is those instances of violence we take very seriously. And traditionally, as you've seen recently, we've had several high-profile cases that we have the perpetrator in custody very quickly. And so if there is a narrative out there that nothing will get done about that, that is false. I can tell you every day I'm down in our detective bureau, and it's an incredible group of men and women working those cases. If someone is physically attacked, we take that very seriously, and we will investigate that to our fullest potential. We have a great partnership with the district attorney's office, and we are seeing very successful prosecutions of those persons' crimes. I think drug possession was your third question, ma'am. So on the drug possession, we do enforce drug possession. It is still illegal. Some of the comments that we've heard and we've had conversation with the community over is exactly what recourse we do have for drug possession. And in 2014, many simple possession of things like cocaine, methamphetamine, they were lowered. The state legislature lowered possession where on simple possession we do write a ticket in many cases now, whereas prior to that it would be a physical arrest and somebody would go to jail. In addition, with COVID and some of the jail restrictions, we just haven't been able to, even on more felony cases, necessarily take people to jail. Those COVID restrictions at the jail have been lessened, and so we commonly do make arrests for drug possession. It just kind of depends on the quantity and the scenario there.
And just one follow-up question. Have the COVID restrictions at the jail been lessened, or are they gone?
So there are no COVID restrictions currently in the jail, as was the last update I got from the sheriff. He did share with me this morning in a meeting, though they are very, very full, and so there are still restrictions on what they will take based on seriousness of the crime.
Thanks, Nicole. Colloquy, Tara.
Well played.
Thanks, Nicole, for those good questions. My question is I think a few of the students brought up the fact that there were a lot of drugs around the schools. Remember back in the day when there was drug-free zones for schools? Where are we with that?
So there are still laws for drug dealing in, I think it's 100 feet of a school. That is something that obviously if we arrest someone selling drugs, we have in our toolbox. There isn't an additional enhancement for somebody that might just be using drugs in and around a school. Obviously, inside is different, but if someone's nearby a school and just getting high, for lack of a better term, that is the same as if they were doing it out here. There's no harsher penalty just for someone using drugs near a school. Now, obviously, if they're giving drugs to students, that's a whole other scenario that we'll deal with.
That it, Tara? Yeah. Any other questions for Deputy Chief Redfern? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? Me. Tara?
We heard some moving testimony from the arts people today. So can you remind me, Matt's idea from, was that a few weeks ago, what we plan to do for the arts people?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So 2 weeks ago, we shared a little bit of information of how the 2023 budget compares in terms of the targets within the community cultural plan. And then what we discussed was the potential of revisiting the public health reserve dollars within ARPA that we've appropriated but not yet spent. And so that was about $500,000 that we had discussed. So that is a part of the conversation for ARPA, and then any of the other initiatives that were a part of Tranche 3 that we haven't yet finalized. And so, again, there's other opportunity for council feedback and direction on how to spend those funds, including the 500 or so as a part of the public health reserve that we could repurpose.
Can I colloquy on that?
Lauren, and then you can ask your question too if you'd like.
So one of the comments that was made was that the budget in the cultural, or the funding laid out in the cultural plan, wasn't adjusted for inflation. Could you also give us an estimate of what that would be or speak to that. Is inflation taken into account, and if not, what would the budget, what's sort of the difference in the budget that we're talking about?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I think that it's true that we would see quite a large increase across the board if we were adjusting our entire budget by inflation. And we shared a couple slides. I think it was all the way back at recommended budget, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago as well. That the overall city budget is still not keeping up with the pace of inflation compared to pre-pandemic levels. And so I think it just gets at that it's really difficult to put together a budget that reflects all of our community values and goals and council priorities. And so we've made some significant investments in the 23 budget as it relates to arts, and not to diminish the need, and certainly the need is there, as we've heard this evening. And so I think part of that conversation is just how do we approach that. I think we're recommending that council moves forward on the budget as proposed, but acknowledges that we have this upcoming ARPA conversation, that we could certainly have additional conversation about funding. And then there's also future opportunities, whether it's through revisiting those targets through the community cultural plan, looking at updating those funding targets based on inflation. And I'm sure Matt and his team have thoughts on how to approach that process as well. So I would say the conversation would just be beginning, not ending, as you're considering the budget this evening.
Lauren, did you have another question? No, that was. Junie, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I feel like we're talking about budget, and also we're asking questions about the public hearing that just happened.
It's a great question. So I think I'll open it up to discussion of the whole budget after we just follow up with questions that kind of flowed from public comment.
Okay, thank you. I just have a question, comment, and we have Mr. Tim Thomas, who's been coming here for a very long time, and his questions often surround BHP. And I was the council representative for 1 year, but I do think his question at least merits some kind of explanation. He talked about an audit process for BHP, and I wonder if that's something that council can do. What type of oversight do we have? So I think that's been part of his question since he's been coming here for a year. And even as a member, I remember a representative, I feel like a lot of times we don't brief council afterward. I mean, you've taken over, right? And we don't get updates. So I think part of the question, is there any oversight? Or is this something we can do?
There's a board of commissioners that has oversight. And as you probably know, Junie, I would characterize BHP as perhaps, no offense to any other component of our city government, but they may well be the best run department in the entire city government. We need to remember, for instance, that during the pandemic, they evicted absolutely no one on the basis of economic hardship. They try to work with their tenants as best they can to avoid eviction. I met with Mr. Thomas this last weekend, and I appreciate his view and his comments, but a performance audit of the kind that he is suggesting obviously costs a fair bit of money. It's an independent process, not conducted either by our regular auditors or by anyone in the city. And although there are a couple of insistent voices, and I know who they are, and we know who they are through emails, who have suggested that there is something going on at BHP that is untoward, I would challenge anybody to go down there and talk to them and discover what that might be, because they are run sensitively, they are run efficiently, they are astonishingly good in terms of their ability to finance their projects. And with almost 1,600 units under management, you are always going to get a couple of people who are unhappy. One of the things they're trying to grapple with now is the fact that when they house high utilizers, it often causes strife and concern on the part of their neighbors, and they're trying to deal with that. And that's part of what we're hearing is you see pictures of units that are clearly being used as chop shops. Some of them are being used as flop houses for large groups of people, and some of them are being used as by people who are utilizing meth. And that, I will tell you that that's an issue that is of great concern. They are effectively not insured for the damages that come from meth use, and remediation costs $40,000 to $50,000 per unit. They have had 10 units over the course of time that have had to be remediated, and it only is as low as $40,000 to $50,000 because they've been fortunate and there's been no collateral contamination of hallways and other neighboring units. So I'm fairly.
Mark, can I pause you there?
Yeah, you can.
Councilmember Wallach?
Yeah.
I'm afraid that we might be getting outside of the direct budget discussion, and I was wondering if either you or, it's not that I disagree or want to cut you off, but if you or Junie might want to just send something into CAC asking that we schedule some time to discuss
I'm happy to.
BHP and or an audit of
I'm
in line
happy,
with.
I'm happy to do that, and I'll just conclude by saying you're not going to find a lot of there. Okay?
Appreciated. Junie, did you ask all your questions? And we didn't really get staff to weigh in there, but.
Thank you.
Will a CAC request be sufficient from staff's perspective on that?
Yep, that works.
Question? Great. Okay, so more questions? Good. The microphone tipped up, so I think that was good. Okay, now let's open it up to discussion on the whole budget. And at some point, we're going to need a motion in possibly 4 parts to pass a budget for the city of Boulder this year. Who'd like to kick off discussion? I like Bob Yates for it.
Thanks. Well, I just want to reiterate what we talked about 2 weeks ago, and I think we started to talk about tonight. I'm going to give Matt the credit for the idea, but I think there's a lot of support on council for looking at the ARPA funding when we come back in a few weeks. I think it's November that you guys are going to come back and talk to us about what we might use some of the remaining funds for. And it occurs to me that some of our industries in this community have recovered very quickly from COVID. Others, as we heard tonight, are more slow to recover, and I think the arts communities have been among those that have been very slow to recover. And that's exactly what ARPA is for, right? ARPA is to help industries and people who are struggling to recover from the setbacks, economic setbacks and social setbacks of COVID. And so I think this is the appropriate use of these funds. I know there's competing uses for these funds. I know you guys will come with a list that's probably longer than the funds we have available, and we'll have to make some difficult decisions. But I would encourage staff, when they do come back in November, with some alternatives for us. And I would encourage you to work with Matt Jazansky and the Arts Commission about how much is appropriate and how those funds could be best used to help arts organizations and artists recover from this very difficult time that they've had over the last 2 or 3 years. Thanks to staff in advance for doing that.
Thanks, Bob. Do we have a colloquy? Nicole can colloquy.
This is just really quick, but I had a chance to talk with Elizabeth Crow in our HHS recently, and one of the things that I had mentioned, kind of that the need for more basic needs funding, that's basically where those ARPA funds are targeted for already. So I just wanted to raise that to people's awareness, and I really encourage everybody to talk to HHS staff and learn a little bit more about what some of the plans are, maybe before that discussion. So I think it could be helpful.
Okay, Matt, and then Mark.
Thanks, Rachel. So a couple things. I certainly to piggyback on what we've been hearing, certainly from the community and certainly my colleagues up here. And as we discussed 2 weeks ago, so I think it sort of just bears putting it out there so it raises out above maybe the noise as we go forth on more conversations, that indeed we need to do more to support the arts. And I think outside of this budget, so Mark and Carrie, you don't need to sweat. I don't think that's going to touch tonight's budget. So you guys are feeling safe, not in the hot seat on that. But immediately, sort of after, as we deal with ARPA, ATPs, those sorts of things, I think is where we can really put some meat on the bone to really support them. I mean, hearing that the Boulder Phil is not eligible for a grant. I mean, one of our long-standing arts organizations is being left out because of a lack of funding. That's a clear barometer for us that we're not quite hitting the mark. So I think we can do better, and we have the money to do so. And one of the important things is, as Bob mentioned, it is absolutely where ARPA is meant for, right? The arts community, much like restaurants, were disproportionately hurt by COVID. This is where the money should be going. So I think we have a safe case for that. And also realizing that we know that the arts community is a financial and economic force multiplier. And so I think we know that we're going to get that money back in spades. So I think that's where the investment really plays out. And I think that's an important thing for us to focus on. So I'll be focusing on the ARPA funds and certainly maybe ATBs as we come up to do that. With regards to the $500,000 that was mentioned, sure, that may have been previously put in HHS for some of those basic services, but at the end of the day, the core use of ARPA was for those disproportionately impacted communities, and I think we can do a little bit of both, given that there's 500,000 and we can sort of help a few different groups rather than putting all our eggs in one basket. And I think that's a conversation for all of us to have as to how we want to split that pot up if indeed that's the case. So thanks.
Mark.
Matt mentioned ATBs, which leads me to the question of how are our sales taxes trending? Obviously, it's a couple months before the beginning of the new fiscal year, but trends are trends. And one source of funding for the arts and any other program would be if there is an unanticipated increase in sales tax. So how are we looking?
Generally, we're looking good on the sales tax front. I would say that the process that we usually follow for adjustments in looking at excess revenue is to close out the books. And we typically recommend some one-time use of funds. So that would be the one-time excess that goes to the fund balance in the general fund. So that typically happens in the spring time frame. Your second adjustment of this year will come as a part of the ARPA conversation. Okay. So we'll provide all of that information as we close out 2022. I think the caution that we just talked about is that we are seeing some inflationary impact in the positive for our revenues as well. So we'll just keep that in mind for ongoing costs, but certainly for one-time uses, that would be another source potentially.
Okay. Let's keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Anyone else with that?
Quick question.
Tara.
This might or might not have anything to do with the budget.
I'll try to cut you off quickly if it doesn't.
Okay. One of the people brought up how there is not affordable space. And so I'm wondering if in the future we can find some affordable space maybe that the city owns. Have we talked about that recently, or is that nothing to do with this council? What? Some.
Are you referring to lease spaces for arts organizations? Yeah, so I know that we talked a bit potentially about looking at ARPA or other sources of funds. CCRS is another. So as we look at the nonprofit support program, it's also worth mentioning that council did approve that general framework as well. Matt, do you want to add to that?
I was going to add, Matt, you knew going into the way back you were going to get summoned up again, so you know that's the case.
Exercises. Matt Jasansky with the Office of Arts and Culture. I just want to add that we do have a program that addresses affordability.
Matt, can you lean in?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Guilty. Matt Jasansky with the Office of Arts and Culture. I did want to mention that we do have a program with the Boulder Arts Commission, grants to address affordability of venues, rental assistance grants. And that's been a very well-used program. And so it is something that's in discussion and something that's going to be extremely important for the next cultural plan. So that discussion will start up next year as well. Thanks, Matt.
That was well targeted, Tara. Good question. Okay, well, let's see if somebody would like to make a motion then, and we can discuss. Oh. Okay. Mark.
Read them all, or?
Staff, what do we need to read here? All of it?
Yep.
Every word.
You were the speed reader.
I speed read. Let's see if you can beat it. I hope somebody timed it.
Yeah. What's in the memo is what's written here on the screen as well. So if you want to reference that the full motion language is in the memo, that is part of the official record.
I will move the various motions that are set forth in our agenda for this evening, including adopting Ordinance 8535 and the three following provisions that are set forth therein to adopt our 2023 budget.
I second the motion.
Mark, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, very briefly. I think it's a well-balanced budget. I think it is addressing a number of critical needs. We've identified a need that may have been a little bit underfunded in terms of the arts, but we have ways of addressing that as well. I think this is a budget that is worthy of adoption.
Thanks. Tara, would you like to speak to your second? There is no pressure. Great. All right. Nicole?
Yeah, thank you. Just going to explain myself. First, I just want to say thanks to all the departments and all the work that you all put in over the last 2 weeks to begin these discussions about how to align our cleanup strategy with our overall homelessness approach. Just really appreciate that. That was, I know, a lot of work. In talking with the team from utilities, we're really doing a lot on our trash management approach that's aligned with what I would consider best practices around trust building especially, and coming up with some innovative and creative strategies that keep our public spaces safe and accessible for all. The proposed approach to metrics and alignment across departments will, I think, help highlight these successes. And one of the things I've been most impressed by is how the trash cleanup folks in utilities have worked to build relationships and trust with people who are living in our public spaces. They're creating a strategy for trash management that focuses on harm reduction and coexistence, and I appreciate that. They're giving out sharps containers for needle disposal. They're teaching people which areas of our public spaces are most at risk from flood, and they're involving the homeless community in trash pickup. I see our utilities department elevating lived experience and giving people who have experience with homelessness a seat at the problem-solving table, and not just in a way that checks boxes. They're really treating people with lived experience as true partners and leaders in this work. It's commendable and something that I hope will emulate in a lot of different departments. I'm still going to vote no, because I'm still left with a concern that our camping ban is not the right approach to helping people exit homelessness and creating the safety that all of us want. With next year's investment, we will have spent $6 million on this Safe and Managed Spaces program, and I don't have any evidence that this investment has moved the needle on addressing the fundamental problem of homelessness that's creating the need for this program. We put a lot of staff time into ticketing people or threatening people with tickets and then moving them around in a punitive way when the need continues to outpace our service capacity. We don't have the permanent housing, mental health services, and addiction services needed to make a dent in homelessness. The proposed budget commits us to spending more money to enforce an ordinance that has no indicators of success and that has not moved the needle on homelessness in our community. Research shows that camping bans are a failed approach to homelessness because when we disincentivize people from letting service providers know where they are, we're disrupting their connection with services and making services harder to access. We all want to end homelessness in our city, but we don't have the regional, state, and federal support that we need to achieve this goal. I want to see us focus our limited funding to move people from encampment settings in a way that connects them with housing opportunities and other services. The situation that housed and unhoused workers, residents, and students are experiencing right now due to homelessness is unacceptable, period. But investing in an encampment cleanup solution that involves a camping ban component is not one I can support. We've had a ban in place for 6 years now. How is the encampment situation better today than in 2016? Don't the impacts of encampments seem worse today? We need to look at a different solution to keep everyone safe. And I know I'm in the minority, at least I think I do, but I do look forward to seeing more innovations with our utilities team, more alignment with our homelessness strategy, and some of these metrics of success in the coming months. Thanks again to everybody who worked so hard to put this together.
Thanks, Nicole. Anyone else? Bob?
Well, I think it's, this is my 7th budget on City Council, and I think it's a tribute to the great work that staff did, not just the two of you, but I think all your partners throughout all the organizations over the last 6 or 9 months. I mean, I think you guys like start tomorrow morning on the next 2024 budget, don't you? It's just it's a year-long process. And I think as I reflect back on the 6 prior budgets that I've worked on on council, this is the one that's probably received the least amount of input. We got some good input tonight. I'm not saying that we didn't have input, and by my count, there was nine people who spoke tonight on the increasing the funding for the encampment cleanup, which is what staff had recommended, and another 16 people spoke on increasing funding for the arts, which I think we've talked about. While it won't be in this specific budget, I think you heard from several members of us that we would like to hear about how we might do that, at least on a one-off basis in the ARPA funding when we talk about next month. And so I think the fact that that there was so little commentary outside of those 2 areas is probably an indication that you guys did a really, really good job of putting together a budget that the community supports. I didn't hear 6 areas or 12 areas or 20 areas of objection. I just heard 2 areas, both of which I think we're actually addressing tonight. One were, I think, well, it depends on what the majority does tonight, but I think the staff recommendation, which the majority of council may support, increasing the funding for encampment cleanups. That's responsive to what the community has asked for, and I think we're being responsive to the arts community and what they're looking for. So I feel good about this budget. I'm going to support it. I'm going to, and I really commend the finance team, but also the entire city staff that had a hand in the budget and putting together a budget that I think the community can embrace, and I think this council will and should embrace. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Lauren, and then Junie.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm going to echo many of the comments that Nicole made. I agree that this is generally a well-balanced budget, and I appreciate all the effort that went into this. I do hear a lot of the public concern over public safety. I bike by Boulder High almost every day, but I've seen an improvement in this area. I think that the Safe and Managed Spaces team is doing difficult work in a very compassionate manner. And yet, it was mentioned earlier that budgets are moral documents, and I cannot support the expansion of this team when I don't see it solving the underlying issues that created this need. I'm skeptical that this increased funding will make students feel safer, and I'm skeptical that it will reduce some of the other inconveniences that we have downtown related to people not having their basic needs met. And for this reason, I will not support this budget. Thank you.
Junie, then Tara.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think hearing from Nicole and also Lauren broke my heart, because I will be supporting the budget today, but I hear everything that you said, and I know it's coming from a place of trying to bring everyone to the table and ensuring that everyone have a fair shake. So I really appreciate your commentaries, and I've been working with the budget team as well since I've been on council for almost 2 years now, and I've seen the work, I've seen the sausage made behind closed door, and I've seen all the hard work that's being put into this. And I do think it's a good and decent budget, but I'm hearing where Nicole is coming from and where Lauren is coming from and the need for improvement. And I wonder maybe this improvement can still be part of the process moving forward. Thank you.
Junie, Tara?
I agree, Lauren. There definitely has been an improvement as I ride my bike around. It's definitely looking, the team, Sam's team, is doing a really good job. I took my weekly ride today, and Goose Creek Tunnel was filled with furniture, and it was dark, and I could not see my way through that tunnel. It was just so there was way too many obstacles, obstructions. And then on Foothills Parkway, there's a giant amount of trash sitting there. If you ever rode from Pearl Street down back to the Boulder Creek path, you just have to look and see a growing pile of trash. So I'm not, the team is doing a great job, but I feel like there's plenty more to do to keep our city environmentally friendly and to keep from degradation environmentally. So I'm looking forward to the increase in the trash, because I know it's not going to it's not, the purpose of it isn't to end homelessness. It's really to pick up the trash so that we can have an environmentally clean city. But I do appreciate what you guys say, because really, honestly, the underlying solutions are, we have to do something about mental health, and we have to do something about substance abuse issues, and we don't, without the county pitching in, we're just not going to get anywhere. So we need to have that meeting for sure with them and get them to see things our way. So again, I go back to my very terrible metaphor about pizza pies, and the budget was such a bad metaphor, but I'm going to bring it up yet again, that budget was so great because it just gave some things for everything. It was a lot of different toppings on that pizza pie budget that I appreciate.
Matt?
All right, I think I'll try to round this out. I hear exactly what Nicole and Lauren are saying, and they bring up good points about what has to be done and where we can do better with regards to our unhoused. But where I quickly differ is objecting to 0.1% of a $500 million budget and using that as justification to say no to all the good that the rest of that money does. So I'm struggling with how to reconcile that, and hopefully in time we can all work together to figure out how we can move forward with that. But in light of this budget, I will be supporting it because of all the good that it does, and I see a bunch of department heads out in the audience, and I just want to commend each and every one of them, not just for the work on the budget, but the willing to adapt to this council and the dynamics that we've brought forward and the thoughts that we've had, and adjust in very short time. And so I think that speaks to staff, it speaks to their work, and certainly how that's folded in. So for such a large budget and a large city, that's a lot of agility and with a lot of moving parts. So credit to all of you. So thank you for that. And so yeah, I will be supporting this, but I do think largely we have to think about what is more deeply rooted where we can't get behind a budget to support the function of this city, and really sink into what those issues are, because a budget like this with this process should be unanimously supported. So hopefully we can reconcile those differences, but I will be supporting it.
Thanks, Matt. I'll just add that I appreciate that, and I remember Jane Broadagam, I think, used to say this is a document that does express your values. This is the embodiment of a city's values, and I agree and respect that, and don't think we're nailing our homelessness strategy, and don't think it's helpful to bop people around. And we have not expressed a different value as a council than we have a camping ban. So I think it's a difficult thing. There are a lot of things, like there's some things in the transportation department I disagree with. There are things I would eliminate single family zoning in a lot of Boulder, and so we're going to approve budget for planning that's going to be implementing things that I don't necessarily agree with. So I think where I would put the energy to doing something different with camping is the midterm retreat, or asking for us to look at it separately. But as it is now, I think the budget's a difficult place to have a large camping ban discussion, and I don't know how we would get there in this evening to accomplish that. So I appreciate and agree with a lot of the concerns, and think that we should look harder at that, and it should be an articulated priority and value if we want to move forward in that way. So with that, I think I will say it's time for a vote and turn to Elisha, unless please let me know if I've missed something. Chris Meschuk.
No, I think you've covered it all. Thank
Great.
you, ma'am. All right. Let me put my vote sheet up here. All right, we'll start the vote on the 4 ordinances related to the budget with Mayor Pro Tem Friend.
I'm a yes.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes.
Spear.
No.
Wallach.
Aye.
Weiner.
Yes.
Yates.
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Folkerts.
No.
The 4 ordinances related to the budget is hereby adopted with a vote of 7 to 1. 6-2? Oh, my apologies. I thought I had all that down pat. Ms. Folkers, my apologies. I had it recorded wrong. That is true, 6-2. Thank you.
Thanks, Elisha. We have a second public hearing tonight. Thank you, Mark and Cara, and the whole budget team and all staff who contribute, which I think is everyone to the budget. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You ready to read the second public hearing in? All right, that is item 5B. The second reading and consideration of a motion to adopt Ordinance 8547, amending Chapter 11-1, Water Utility, BRC 1981, to implement policies and procedures in the event of a drought and setting forth related details.
Thanks, Elisha. Chris, take
Yeah,
us away.
as we get folks settled here with a little change out, I'm going to turn it over first to Joe Tadeucci, our Director of Utilities, who's going to kick this presentation off when they're ready.
Is it on? And can you hear me?
Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris. I'm Joe Tadeucci, Director of Utilities, and this is a second reading for ordinances associated with the city's drought plan. You might recall in early September, we put together an information item on water resilience, and this plan is definitely connected to resilience and how we think about climate change, and with more frequent natural disasters like droughts. Updating this plan will position us well for that. So it's a very important operational plan, and the approval of it is actually under the city manager's approval. And what the plan does is it sets forth procedures that we would use to implement restrictions or things like that if we found ourselves in a drought. And so council's role related to the drought plan is approval of the amendments to ordinances associated with the plan. And while the plan is really an operational type of plan that deals with the mechanics of implementing water use restrictions, we also know that there is a lot of public interest in the multi-year drought on the Colorado River, and which is one of Boulder's 3 water sources, and there's also a lot of interest in water conservation. And the drought plan, again, is an operational plan. It's not the planning document to deal directly with those things. But Kim will touch on in her presentation how we're monitoring and addressing those items. And so Kim Hutton is here with me. She is our Water Resources Manager, and she's got a real brief presentation, 5 or 6 slides, I think, and she'll give an overview of the plan. And then the last thing I'll mention before turning it over to her is maybe a month ago you saw the flood master plan and heard about how the racial equity work was integrated into that plan. This is another planning document where we have done that, and where we have realized we've previously relied on price triggers that maybe excluded certain people, and so we've revisited that and thought about that in the update of this plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim.
Thanks. There we go. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks, Joe. Yeah, so I'm going to give a high-level summary of the drought plan and an overview of the process that we went through to update this plan. And this is just to give you some context for the code changes that you're being asked to approve tonight. There we go. As Joe mentioned, the drought plan is an operations plan, and it provides guidance for recognizing droughts that will affect the city's water supply, and also responding to a drought or droughts in such a way that we can ensure water availability to protect public safety, health, and welfare. The drought plan, in conjunction with the city code, which you're considering tonight, and a city manager rule, provides a framework for making a formal drought declaration and implementing drought response measures. So our response to drought is a staged response. And what that means, depending on the severity of the drought, the classification of the drought, different water demand reduction goals and response strategies will be implemented. So as an example, in a serious drought, which we call Drought Alert Stage 1, we may seek up to a 20% reduction in water use by placing limitations on lower priority outdoor water uses, such as watering lawns. And in more severe droughts, we may seek additional water savings through implementing different response measures. So how do we decide which water uses to maintain or to limit during a drought? It's done through these guiding principles. So we developed these guiding principles during the update process, which included both internal and external engagement. And these guiding principles help us prioritize decisions related to water use during times when water supply is limited. The guiding principles include equity, ecosystem, climate, and local food production considerations. And these, again, came out of this outreach effort or stakeholder process that represents some of our community values. So in the next few slides, they illustrate how the guiding principles are integrated into our drought response. Once a drought alert stage has been declared, and that's done by the city manager, staff implements drought response measurements to try to achieve water savings goals. The primary focus in drought response would be reducing outdoor water use. And the reason for that is outdoor water use tends to be more discretionary than other water uses, indoor water use. In addition, we can really see there's more savings potential in outdoor water use. And we can achieve these water savings goals through a variety of means, including education and outreach, water budget modifications to rates, applying surcharges, and also implementing water use limitations. Now, how the guiding principles tie back into these is those top two categories, education and outreach, and maybe modifications to budgets or rates. We would implement some considerations, equity considerations in those before we actually do anything. We'd also reflect back on the racial equity instrument that we developed through this process to inform some of our approaches to those measures. And then within water use limitations in itself, there are, how do we prioritize, even in the outdoor sector, how we're reducing water use? Tying back to the guiding principles, this is a table that's in the drought plan. I'm going to go over it word for word. No. So it just what it's doing is it shows kind of the options of drought response measures that we can draw from when we're trying to achieve these water use reductions. And I have an excerpt right here to help you out. So during a drought, we've got two lines there. The category being existing irrigated turf grass or lawns, and annual flowers and existing trees. So not new trees. There's another line item for new plantings. But we may place limitations on the frequency that lawns and flowers can be watered, and that frequency varies depending on the severity of the drought. And as we approach a more extreme or more severe drought stage, what we're doing is prioritizing the maintenance of trees over the maintenance of lawns due to the cooling effects, the benefits from a tree canopy in the city. So that this is just an example of the prioritization of different outdoor water uses. So that was my summary of the drought plan. And this slide is just a summary of the process that we are going through to update the plan. We've been working on the update for the last 2 years. We've included RAB, internal stakeholder and community engagement, And I mentioned this briefly, we also used the racial equity instrument to develop an adaptive approach to drought response implementation. In May, we received unanimous approval, or a unanimous recommendation from RAB to approve the drought plan. And so now we are at the stage here with City Council considering the adoption of ordinances that support drought declaration and implementation of drought response measures. And from here, the next stage would be city manager approval of the drought plan, as well as approval of city manager rules. So that's my quick overview of the drought plan. Joe mentioned these other water supply issues that may be of interest. There's a lot of attention in the media about these 3 issues, and they are not covered in the drought plan, so we just wanted to take this opportunity to make a plug for them and the work that we're doing around them. So the first being climate change. The city engages in long-range water supply planning, and we also include climate change assessments in those planning efforts. And we use that information to help inform our water rights and infrastructure investments. So some of that actually kind of comes through in the budget there through our capital improvement program. Second, there's been a lot of attention on the drought on the Colorado River lately. The city receives about 1/3 of its annual water supply or drinking water supply from the Colorado River through projects operated by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. And we are monitoring the situation on the Colorado River and have options to manage a reduction of that source if need be. And then finally, while the drought plan addresses short-term management of water use, long-range management is done through water conservation. Every 7 years, we update a water efficiency plan, and that plan describes water use and efficiency goals and informs our water conservation program. We are kicking off the update this fall to that water efficiency plan with a target completion date of the end of 2023. And we are looking forward to working with RAB and the community on that as well. Thank you. And we are available for questions.
Thanks so much. Who's got questions? Lauren.
Thank you. So, as this mentioned, in some stages of the drought restriction, we're trying to get people to not do new landscaping because of the watering requirements. How will this, for certain kinds of building permits, landscaping standards are required and often have to be pass inspection before building occupancy is allowed. How would that affect those kinds of requirements?
Yeah, I don't know that we've fully developed new landscaping requirements. We understand not only that part of it is code, so if we wanted to make some adjustments to that, we would have to be changing code as well, but also recognizing that without planting, you've got potential for a dust bowl, a barren land. So those are discussions we've had about how to address it, and that we will continue those conversations with our planning department.
Thank you.
I'm going to colloquy on that and then turn to Matt. On the same part of the memo about new landscape installations, it talks about watering restrictions on new landscape installations. Are there also restrictions on existing landscaping, or is it just targeting new? Like it says imposing temporary restrictions on new landscape installations, so you can't install them, and then watering restrictions on the irrigation of new landscape installations as deemed appropriate by city manager.
Yeah, so I think in terms of new plantings, that would get at kind of the seasonality of it, and can anything wait to a better period?
Well, in this, I'm assuming if it's watering new landscape, like it's already in the ground.
Yeah. So then that specific line, or why we pulled that out separately, was to give us the flexibility to, if we are making restrictions on lawn watering, we could have an exception for new plantings, and so that there would be some to promote survival of new plantings.
Okay, so I think I read it the other way. I thought that it was going to be more restrictive for new plantings, but you're saying it would be more generous watering for...
It's really to give us some flexibility
Okay.
in doing an analysis or
Thank-
determination.
Okay, thanks for that. Matt?
Thank you, Rachel. Well, for one, I like that we're forward-thinking. Drought is a inevitability for where we are, and so I think this is a really important thing to do, and I like the changes where we're at. One thing that this conversation sort of begs is a little bit like forward-thinking in terms of, are there conversations about ongoing and permanent code changes that get at the conservation now ahead of having to then be declaring any sort of stages of drought, and so we can kind of get ahead of the storm more or less, I think is really where it's at, is are things that regarding codes around zero-scape. I mean, what are we doing proactively before we start issuing a stage thing, so that when we do get to a drought, we're more resilient at the time that we arrive at that drought. Right. So that's what I'm kind of wondering, is how do we set the runway so that when we do get into a drought, we're in the best shape possible with regards to some of that conservation stuff. And then I have a different question, but that's a start.
Yeah, and I think that's a mix of both our long-term planning as well as our water conservation program. So long-term planning, we're looking at under build-out conditions, various climate scenarios. Can we meet our demands with our existing supplies? And if not, what do we need to do to change that? Do we build out the supply, or do we reduce demand? So those conversations are happening on that level. And then in terms of the efficiency plan, that's kind of the efficiency plan, which I mentioned we're starting this year. We'll take a closer look at what are our demands, and the conversation that you think that you would like to happen will be happening through the efficiency planning process. What can we do now to meet some reduction goals, target reduction goals in terms of overall water use, long range reductions, which could include code changes. Landscaping requirements are a big part of that. That's where that would happen. The forum would be the efficiency plan.
I appreciate that. My second question kind of goes in a similar direction, but references sort of the fact that 1/3 of our water comes from a basin that is virtually evaporating before our eyes. And so, obviously, the comment says, well, we need to address that if need be. I'm not a water expert, but I would say that we need to. I mean, we're already seeing California take a cut on their 4.4 million acre feet that they're guaranteed in the Colorado River Pact. So we're already seeing the massive cuts. Now, I don't want to have that conversation about water rights here, because that's obviously not the place for it. But I do think, again, from a resiliency perspective, it's, do we build out more supply, or do we do the conservation? So it kind of circles back to that piece. And so I know that it sounds like you're going to work on it this next year. When do you think that conversation or that work will come back to us, where we'll get to sort of see what those pieces are and then fold that into some of our other work? Because I know we're having a conversation about planning stuff coming up soon. So I'm sort of curious where that all folds in now and into the next year.
Yeah, I'm not. Do you want to answer this one? I'm not sure of council's role in this, the efficiency plan. It may be approval.
Yeah, and I'm not, okay, I turned my mic on, not off. That's good. Just to reiterate what Kim was just saying, the land use questions are great questions, and the efficiency plan, and then you just approved the flood master plan. We have 2 other utilities, water and wastewater. We'll have future master plans or whatever we're going to call them in the future. And those are the places that we will look at those things. And currently, like what we're doing now, I know Kim and the team and the consultants are modeling scenarios where there's less water from the Colorado River, or there's a climate change scenario that really dries things up. The team is really applying the science to that and looking at all sorts of different scenarios, and so we have plans in place with how we'll adapt to that when the time comes, if and when the time comes, and it's probably when.
Thanks.
Mark?
Am I reading this ordinance correctly? It seems to me that the only body that's not really involved in this process is the city council. This is an ordinance, do I correctly understand that this is an ordinance that grants a great deal of discretionary power to the city manager without any approval at all by the elected?
Dried up? Isn't that why? Because we're already dried up?
No, well, no, my yeah. Dad joke. I mean, am I wrong on that? I see a provision that says after the declaration, we'll be notified. Even during the pandemic, when we granted emergency powers, it was pursuant to an authorization by the elected legislative body of Boulder. Why is that not the case? And that doesn't apply to us, because I don't think it's going to happen in the next year, but it applies to a future council. And I am very reluctant to at least have a basic approval of the declaration. Because the people sitting here, or sitting here in a couple of years, are people who've been elected to do this. And you know, we've done very well with a model of weak council, strong city manager, but I don't think that ought to imply invisible council, strong city manager. And so that, am I reading it correctly, or have I misinterpreted?
Mark, I appreciate your question, and I would look to Joe to see if he or if Kim know some of the history around why that construct is created the way that it is. I'm not sure I know that history, yeah. But they're nodding, so.
I can take a crack at that. I think it's really because it's operations, and it's an important operational decision that we would need to make. But honestly, I would never see a scenario where staff would just go into a vacuum and make a major decision like that and not bring the council along and advise and get feedback on what we're doing.
I hear you, but that's not what it says. And when I read an ordinance, I'm looking to see what it says, not what the good intentions are. And if I'm wrong, please correct me.
In my understanding, that's the way the construct is set up. But I think, as Joe mentioned, a lot of the there's many things that the city does from an operational standpoint, and when there are those big operational decisions, there is typically then conversation here with council to discuss that further. So I hear the concern, and I don't think it's there, and it's not set up as a construct of anything of lack of trust or about power. I think it's really about trying to focus that balance of the operational pivot that we would need to make as an organization from a water supply standpoint. So, Teresa, I don't know if there's anything else to add from.
I'll get a little bit down to brass tacks here, okay. Which is what Joe said, but said very nicely. This is a separation of powers issue, and this is vested with the city manager as an operational issue. And so that's why it appears this way. And so the city manager can exercise the discretion to consult council, and certainly that's the practice, but it is discretionary.
Well, when you look at the scope of the powers that are being granted, it's not just your typical operational issue. This is control over everyone's behavior with respect to the most fundamental commodity we have, which is water. And to not have this body have at least some approval right, I don't have a problem with the scope that we're giving the city manager. I don't have a problem with the aggressiveness with which the city manager is permitted to act, but that act should be pursuant to council authorization. This is qualitatively different than most sort of operational issues where we leave that to the discretion of the city manager. This is control over all everybody's behavior with respect to water. That's not just operational.
I'm going to colloquy, and then maybe Junie wants to also. So it reminds me a bit of COVID. Like Jane made those orders. I think they were considered emergency orders for health and safety, and so I'm wondering, is this in line with that sort of practice? And I would just make a pitch maybe to my colleagues. That was okay by me. Like Jane, one person was able to quickly make a decision, and also she took a lot of public heat for it. And you would hate for council members to be, needing to respond to an emergency drought situation and being tugged by voters in a way that I think city managers are a bit insulated from. So the question to staff is, and then I'll turn to Junie, is this like the emergency health protocols? Is that what you're talking about, Teresa, in terms of the administrative separation of powers? Or
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, that's accurate. And the other thing I would add here is, of course, council sets policy, and so adoption of these ordinances is the policy direction, and then staff is charged with carrying out that policy.
I was going to add to that as well. Before you asked the question about emergency, a drought is a more slowly developing scenario than like a wildland fire or something like that, but it is still an emergency, and having a plan that we can implement and do it nimbly and quickly is still really important. You can imagine if we had to then have a policy discussion of choices we were going to make, that could go on for weeks or months when we have to react. So I definitely hear what you're saying, Mark, but I think there is some logic behind it.
I hear you, but this is not a question of weeks and months. This is a question of a week. Come to us, you tell us that you're going to declare a drought emergency. If you want, you can tell us what you want to do in that drought emergency, and ask for the council to support it. That's sort of our job. This is not, policy with respect to, leave, for employees. This is qualitatively different, and the scope of those powers is really quite extraordinary.
Mark, I'm going to suggest maybe you will want to make a counter motion when we have a moment for motions on this and propose that change. Junie, do you still have a colloquy?
I just had a question, and I don't know if you have the answer to that question at this time. What is the usual standards as part of this process in other cities? Or, I understand where Mark is coming from. Again, we are the legislative body, but at the same time, we don't want to slow things down, knowing if there's an emergency situation. And we also want to ensure that the city manager can do her job. That if that's her job, why take it away from her? But I would imagine part of it would require that, she walk with us as part of the process, because Jane has done the work. So why can't she do the same work? So my question is more related to what is the standard, if there's such a thing?
I'm going to look to Layla. Layla is the project manager on this one, just to confirm what I'm saying. But we did an assessment of what other communities are doing, and I think there's a mix of approval processes. Is that fair to say, Layla? Some include board approval or council approval, others do not.
Layla, would you like to just introduce yourself for the record, since we did get some info from you?
Yes, hi, I'm Layla Parker, Water Resources Project Manager.
Thank you. Okay, so I think if we are done with questions, let's turn to the public hearing. Over to Elisha. All right, now.
We have one in-person person to speak at the public hearing, if they're still here. That is Shayna Larson. Shayna Larson.
Shayna Larson, come on down if you're still here. Does not look promising. So we have also one virtual speaker, and maybe Shayna also is online, Brenda?
I do not see Shayna online.
All right. Shane, if you're nearby, we'll come back to you after. We'll give you another chance after virtual if you are out of the chambers. Over to you, Brenda.
So for our virtual hearing tonight, we have one speaker. And so Lynn Siegel, I am activating your microphone now. You should be able to unmute.
By far, water is our most important asset. You know, that's stating the obvious. This should have been part of the budget. Well, it is in a way. It certainly is with CU South, with expansion of population. It's so fundamental. And it's so sad that there was a secret negotiation put up with CU and that the land back in 1996 was inflated in value from 9 to 16 million, and the city couldn't buy it then. So now, oh, that's all forgotten. No. Time happens, but that happened. And that shouldn't have happened. And now we're in a dilemma. The 2 people that were killed were not in South Boulder. You know, there's 15 other drainages. And this is a giveaway of our water resources and all the growth that comes with CU. No way. No way. And every developer subsidy that you support in this council that comes through from planning board, every single one depletes our water supply with Colorado River in the state that it is. And yet, I'm not hearing that from Joe Tadeucci. I'm not hearing that from anyone. And I'm hearing no response when I speak about water. My daughter is a artist, okay? She's a water artist. She's in the space of data physicalization. She takes geographic data and shows 3-dimensionally what water is used, what we're actually using. She has a piece in San Francisco in the Capital One Bank building that's 3 stories high with all these necklaces. Of each necklace represents, you know, in this big lobby atrium, each necklace represents a different water permit holder in the state of California and their use. And each bead on the necklace is 360 some acre feet of water, you know? Like, that's what people need to see. And how do you apply that when you see that? You shut down the population. You lower the enrollment at CU. Certainly not expand it. Certainly not offer 3rd stories. And you guys put your vote on it each time. It's like, okay, another story, that's fine. Okay, more CU invasion into Boulder's land, down on, you know, at Liquor Mart. It's so revolting. I mean, Dick Tharp getting the athletic
Thanks, Lynn. Your
director's
time
vote.
is up. Feel free to email us any further comments. With that, I'm going to open it up to council for follow-up questions and discussion, and we'll try and move through this pretty quickly. I'm going to just poach the first question because I forgot to ask one earlier, which is just under 11149C, variances. The city manager may grant variances, and then it says in cases of undue hardship, such as extreme economic impacts, health and safety considerations, or religious objections. And I don't understand what the religious objections could be to, like, landscaping needs or drought conditions. Like,
Right.
why is that in there?
Can you hear me? Okay. One option that we have that we may implement are specific days of week for watering. And so if the day of week of your watering falls maybe on a religious date for you, and you can ask for a variance. That's really what that one gets to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to turn first to Bob and then Matt.
Matt, I was going to make a comment. Do you have a question? Oh, okay. Before we make the motion, I want to try to talk my esteemed colleague Mark Wallach out of an alternative motion. Mark, here's my thought on this. As Teresa said, there is a separation of powers here, and we do need to trust our city manager, just as we did during the pandemic when she made a lot of emergency decisions. She had access to a lot of information we didn't have, and oftentimes had to move very quickly. I understand droughts are a little bit more slow moving. I trust the city manager to make the right decisions and to confer with council. I have no doubt whatsoever that the city manager. I realize that the ordinance doesn't require her to do that. I know we have a lot of lawyers on the south of the end of the dais that all can read the same thing, and I know that she's not required to, but on the other hand, I hate to tie her hands the other direction and require her to confer with us, and then also turn the decision into a political decision, which it should never be. It should be a science-based decision that she makes. And so I'm confident that this city manager would confer with us, consult with us, probably quite frankly ask us. And of course, we don't know what future city managers might do. We don't know what future councils might do. At the end of the day, the city manager works at our pleasure. So if she were, or they were, to make a decision that a majority in council was strongly opposed to, we always have a certain amount of leverage. I'll just say it that way. And so I'm confident that we're not going to have a city manager who's going to go off and do something that is out of sync with either this council or future council. So I would support the motion as written, and I hope that you would not make an alternative one if you.
Let me colloquy on that. I'm not going to make an alternative motion. I'm simply going to vote against this one.
Okay, I was hoping that you vote for it, but that's okay. So that's where I'm going to support it.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Councilmember Yates there. It captures it very well. The only thing I would add to that is having seen the watershed and had a chance to spend the day with some of our water folks and utilities staff, I just could not be more impressed with how well you all manage the intricacy of our water supply. And I cannot imagine a council like us that does not have that expertise trying to make some game time decisions during an emergency. So just know that I just want to make it clear, I don't think this is coming out of a lack of respect for the expertise of staff or anything like that. Just want you to know that we really do respect that. It's quite a lot to manage.
Thanks, Nicole. Matt?
Well said, Bob and Nicole. That leads well and greases the wheels for the motion. I make a motion to pass Ordinance 8547.
Second.
Matt, would you like to speak to your motion?
Bob and Nicole pretty much did all the speaking on why this is a good thing and why we're doing the right thing, so I won't waste any more oxygen on that.
Tara, any oxygen you'd like to waste? Anyone else have a comment? I just have one concern I'll raise, which is, again, with the religious exemption. Like, I can imagine that if you're a wedding venue or a sports field or something, you may have the same issue. Like, Saturday morning doesn't work for us. So I don't understand why we would specifically give religious entities. It seems like we could have language in there that is just more broad. Like the city manager could have discretion based on specific organizational needs that can't water on a certain day or whatever. Just water. I don't think I would limit it to religious and I'd make it a little bit crisper, like, if they're not able to comply for some reason due to their business needs, we'll allow a different day or something like that. Teresa?
I'd like to provide a clarification. This exemption is not meant for religious institutions and what works for their convenience or not. It's instead aimed at things like if someone observes the Sabbath such that they aren't able to go turn on their water and that's their watering day, then they could get a variance so that they could do a different day.
Okay, that sort of sounds like it falls under undue hardship to me, but okay. That's all I'll say on it. Thanks. Elisha, would you like to take us through a roll call vote?
Yes, ma'am. We'll start this roll call with Councilmember Joseph.
Yes.
Spear?
Yes.
Wallach?
For the reasons stated, no.
Weiner?
Yes.
Yates?
Yes.
Benjamin?
Yes.
Folkerts?
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Friend?
Yes.
Ordinance 8547 is hereby adopted with a vote of 7-1.
I was this close.
Great. I'm going to turn really quickly. Thank you for that presentation. Under matters from city manager, there's nothing scheduled, but Chris, would you like to give us a brief update on the fire that was burning before we got to meeting?
Sure, I'm happy to just give a really quick recap. About 2:30 this afternoon, there was a report of a fire north of Boulder in the area of the Lake of the Pines, kind of Highway 36 and Nelson Road. The fire itself grew to about 19 acres, and as of about 5:30 p.m. today, it was 100% contained. So they moved very quickly on that. There were crews on the ground. There was also a single air tanker, as well as one helicopter that assisted in the support of the fire. They did close Highway 36 briefly due to smoke and visibility. And there was the subdivision in that area that was put in on an evacuation warning. I do want to thank our Boulder Fire staff who helped respond from a mutual aid standpoint, as well as many of our department staff that when fire gets said out loud, they pivot their jobs, as well as our staff in the Office of Disaster Management. And just a PSA reminder for everyone, tomorrow is another red flag day from noon to 6 p.m. Winds potentially up from 25 to 35 miles an hour with low humidity. So be safe out there tomorrow and no open burning, please. And that's the update.
Great.
Happy to answer any questions.
Great reminder. Matt.
For the few that are still listening, I'll take this reminder to vote yes on 2A for our climate tax, and also the county ballot measure that also supports wildfire resiliency. We need it. As you can see, any time of year is fire season in this community, so vote on those two. We can advocate till we're blue in the face, so I will go blue in the face advocating for wildfire resiliency and the climate tax.
Thanks, Matt. Any other matters from mayor, members of council, city attorney, or discussion items? Anyone want to debrief? Going once, twice. I get to do it. Done.
At 9:45 p.m.